Hi, hello, hope you're taking care of yourself. Welcome to Worst Books of 2025. Jail, lifetime, no parole, 30 lashes, and also your entire extended family is now on probation. Wearing chainmail under a lace dress to go and kidnap your ex's one-night stand is 100% the behavior of somebody who practices their evil laugh in the mirror. Over a Pop-Tart? What? In the 2 years that have passed, all of her hair has gone gray, and she's also living almost exclusively on tinned food like sardines. That's just what happens when you get divorced. It's a side effect that 4 out of 5 doctors will not warn you about. It's like the author, while writing this book, had some kind of traumatic brain injury that led her to forget all of the themes that she was writing about, and also how all of her characters act. Crazy that I'm filming this on time on New Year's Day and not like 2 months later in the first part of March. This video is going to be full spoiler, as God intended, as you would probably request, but I'm not going to be like fully synopsizing all of the books. Obviously, that would take forever. I'm just going to be sharing specific unredacted moments of rage, ire, calamity, disappointment, distress, as they are relevant, and they're going to be relevant. So I feel like it's a good idea to just cover my bases and do a mass spoiler warning. But the video is timestamped, fortunately for you, so if for some reason you want to read one of these books, you can always just skip that section. Come back to it. If you hate it later, maybe don't come back to it. If you actually like the book, maybe don't come back and watch that section if that's the case. There are 6 books in this list that we will be talking about today. I could have included more. I can always include more when I'm feeling mean-spirited or negative, which is always, but I like to limit myself in these videos in number to the books that really feel like they deserve it. And this year, when I really sat down and thought about it, that number was 6. So that's what we have to go through. Ground rules and disclaimers, as I always do every single year. And if you've already heard this before, you can just skip forward a couple of minutes to whatever I put on the screen if you don't want to listen to me just trying to like preemptively silence a couple of comments that I always tend to get on these. This is always the most critical video that I make all year on this channel, and these are my real opinions. These are my worst books of the year, but also what you should remember with that is that they're just my opinions. It's not that serious. You might love some of the books I talk about in this video. You might love them even for some of the very reasons that I found them to be miserable. I don't think that you're dumb for that. I don't think that you're a loser. I don't actually think I know anything about you beyond the fact that we have different tastes, and I probably wouldn't take your book recommendations. My opinions in this video about these books are going to be scathing. Like, I'm probably going to be kind of mean. I'm probably going to be kind of hyperbolic in the name of creating an entertaining, celebratory end-of-year roundup of what were otherwise really miserable reading experiences for me. But it's not about you, okay? If me hating a book makes you start to hate it, or if it makes you feel embarrassed for liking it, you probably don't actually have good enough reasons to like that thing. I actually encourage you to interrogate that feeling because, for example, I love plenty of slop. I'm an Allie Hazelwood fan. I like reality TV. I like shonen anime that has no discernible characterization whatsoever. I liked Supernatural even after season 5, but I don't actually find it very personally threatening when those things are called out for being slop by people who don't like them, because I've actually thought through why I like them anyways. Many studies have shown that you can actually grow your brain by up to 3 sizes by critically engaging, even with the slop that you consume. This might shock you, but the world is in fact not black and white, actually. Everything has a fair bit of nuance. Crazy, I know. And the concerned citizen, the new viewer, might think to themselves, why are you doing a trigger warning on tone about a video that is called something along the lines of Worst Books of 2025? Wouldn't just naming the video that prevent people who get upset about the concept of disliking things from clicking on that video? Okay, perfect. Other disclaimers: I don't hate women. I don't hate reading. I didn't want to hate these books. I don't want to be here, but I'm very much a curious person sometimes, and like a 4-year-old child, that curiosity oftentimes leads me to some sticky situations, if you will. Okay, that's everything for real. Defense of my moral character and my philosophy as a reviewer over. Let's get into the video. These are ranked in order, by the way, so you have a lot to look forward to the further that we get. Starting off with a doozy, in 6th place this year, we have Bury Your Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab, and let it be known from the very beginning of this video that my list is informed by spite and spite alone, because there are objectively worse books in terms of quality, prose, thematic messaging, plot construction, really just competent authorship. There's objectively worse books I've read this year that are not going to be on this list because they just didn't make me particularly mad. And these are books like Lights Out, When the Moon Hatched, books that I gave somewhere in the range of 2 to 3 stars when I read them, that are this particular book talk variety of low-hanging fruit that I could easily pretend to hate in this video more than I actually did. And I could do that because it would be a simple thing to write a tight 5 about a book featuring a TikTok thirst trap creating stalker who is actively invited in to the plucky heroine's home to consensually stalk her, right? Like, I could do it. I could make jokes about that book. It would probably even be really funny, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't have the passion. My heart just wouldn't be in it in the same way that it's in the roasting of the books that are here instead, because to me, oftentimes even worse than the unserious bullshit that I read and forget about instantly, though there most definitely is some unserious bullshit later on this list, even worse than those are the books that baited me. They're books that ended up feeling like such a spectacular waste of time that I end up upset with myself retroactively for ever even entertaining the idea of picking them up because they sounded cool. Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, long preamble over, is just a really great example of that. This book is, for people who are unaware, V.E. Schwab's toxic vampire lesbian saga that came out last year. It is multiple POV, morally gray vampires through the ages, just generally being the worst to each other, while also exploring what it means to be a vampire, what it means to hunger for something, and to have the power to sate that hunger, especially as juxtaposed with the reality of life as women in these eras where women did not have very many rights or abilities to control their destinies. It's like gay vampires x sad moving historical fiction, which TLDR sounded like crack to me. It sounded really up my alley, and as a result, The Fall from Grace was all the more upsetting when I left this book feeling like it had almost set back its own themes. It was pretty confused about what it was trying to be or say. My relationship with V.E. Schwab, for context, is really, I should just know better by now, and I feel like I finally do. She writes books that consistently have the coolest premises of all time. Like clockwork, I'm baited almost every time that one of her books breaches containment and gets a major marketing push, because it's always cradled in this perfect valley of popular enough to feel like I'm a part of a conversation and also interesting enough for me to want to pick it up on my own apart from that. And yet, this was the, I think, 6th V.E. Schwab book that I've read, and I have enjoyed probably 1.5 of them, maybe 2 if we combine all of the things that I enjoyed about the Shades of Magic trilogy, which is really just Holland, and that's it. If we combine all of them together, it can maybe equal 1 book, but everything else has ended up just feeling kind of empty, and the reason for that varies a lot book to book, but it's almost always to do with the characters in some way. In this case, with this book, and you're going to be getting more detail, don't worry to make this make sense, but my issue is that the characters Lottie and Sabine are so ill-conceived within the overall arc of this story that they end up counteracting what feels for 90% of this book is going to be the obvious thematic takeaway, because ultimately this is a book about an abusive relationship. We are following 3 girl queen vampires, Sabine from the 1500s, who originally was named Maria, but I'm going to be using the name Sabine for the rest of this video because that's what she uses for the majority of this book. Sabine's girlfriend slash ex-girlfriend, who she turned sometime in the 1800s, and then Alice in the modern day, who was mysteriously turned, and she's trying to solve the mystery of what caused that, while also showing you what the first few moments of vampirehood are like for all of these characters. And you're getting the perspective through generations of all of these characters. The first half of the book is mostly Sabine and Alice, and then you get Lottie's perspective kind of all at once. We'll go into that later. The core of the novel ends up revolving around the fact that Sabine has, for various reasons, kind of blackened her soul over time, and she's just become like super evil. And there's lore in the book that indicates that this is just an inevitability for any vampires that manage to survive for a long time. But honestly, there wasn't even a lot to corrupt. From the jump in this book, from the very beginning, Sabine is, at best, aggressively self-reliant, and at worst, genuinely sadistic. I liked her character a lot in the first half of this book because I enjoy reading about unlikable, challenging characters as long as I feel like they have something to say. And part of what makes Sabine so interesting is how she chooses to interface with 15, 16, 1700s Europe as a queer woman who has vampire powers. Like, yeah, you probably would feel mad all the time. You probably would be hungry all of the time for something, even if it's not blood, even if it's just for independence and freedom. And that's how she's characterized until she meets Lottie. Lottie, for context, is the girl that in the modern day, Alice is pretty sure turned her into a vampire after they had a one-night stand. That's where we started. We saw her for like a chapter, and then she was completely absent from the story until about the halfway point, when you just get all of her history all at once for like 30% straight of the book. To summarize very broadly everything that you need to know for what I'm about to say, Lottie meets Sabine during the 1800s, during her like season or whatever, and yada yada yada, Sabine was obsessed with her. Lottie also kind of hated her life because she's queer in the 1800s, so they get together, Sabine turns her, now they're both vampires, and they end up in this really codependent, toxic relationship where Sabine is just a textbook abusive partner until finally Lottie is able to escape from her after something happens that makes her realize, wait, maybe my girlfriend is kind of a sadistic demon and I don't really like that. Maybe dating the 300-year-old vampire who doesn't want me to have friends, maybe that wasn't the best idea that I've ever had in my life. Maybe this relationship is actually the worst thing of all time. So yeah, she escapes, she leaves, and ever since then, Lottie has been consistently on the run because Sabine, naturally very obsessive, has not just let her go. She's not just let her get away. And every single time that Lottie has gone on to forge a new relationship with another woman in the like 150 years or whatever that they've been broken up, Sabine always finds against them. She always hunts them down, and then she either kills them or turns them into a vampire, or just generally does her very best to ruin Lottie's life, because Lottie is not allowed to be with other people. Turns out, naturally, that Sabine was the one who turned Alice at the start of this book after she found out that Lottie had hooked up with her. And at this point, I've given you all the necessary context up to about 90% of the way through this book. Obviously, a lot more happens, but none of it's relevant to what I'm about to say. At this point, I'm having a decent time. The book is very vibey, lush, slow, but that's fine. That's okay. I was becoming increasingly concerned about the direction of the story the further that we got through Lottie's portion, just because once Lottie's perspective is introduced, Sabine is functionally deleted from the book, and that made her so much less interesting to me. She was very much reduced in the back half to this sinister, lurking force, rather than the unlikable, often cruel, but ultimately very complicated character that she was shown to be in the first 50%. All of her nuance is just sanded off by the fact that now she's evil and abusive, and she doesn't even defend herself because you're not getting her POV anymore. But whatever, it's fine. I still have a feeling that this book is ultimately going to end up saying something about like cycles of abuse, cycles of violence, the variable amount of freedom through history that queer people have had, and how that is mirrored by both Sabine's character and also the control that she insists on having over Lottie's world, over Alice now. But whatever, going into the ending, it was fine. It was okay. It was like a Tuesday kind of book. It was a 3-star Andy, burned out a little bit on its potential, but that's fine. It's whatever. But the ending of this book was so unbelievably stupid that it completely ruined the rest of the experience for me. What happens is that Lottie tells Alice her tale of woe. I think that's why we as the reader are also getting it all at once. It's because Lottie's actively telling Alice in the modern day. And at the end, she asks Alice if she's willing to help her take down Sabine once and for all. Lottie is incapable of doing it herself because vampires are beholden to the promises that they make inside of the lore of this world. And one of the myriad examples of control in this horrible abusive relationship was that Sabine made Lottie promise that she would never do anything to hurt her without actually telling Lottie that that promise would be binding until the end of time. So Lottie can't do it herself. And she also tells Alice, like, hey, Sabine just turned you, right? 2 days ago. So it's actually good for both of us if you take her out, because doing so will give me my life back and I'm not gonna have to worry anymore. But because we're doing it so quickly, it'll also revert you back into being a normal human person. So that way you can go back to your life. And Alice is like, cool, sounds good. What can I do? And then the ending happens all at once. Like, that's not true for anything else about this book. It's overall quite slow burn, but everything I'm about to describe happens in like 15 pages with no aftercare, which is half the problem. I shit you not, the master plan that Lottie and Alice come up with to carry out this assassination is just going to a bar and letting everything else figure itself out. That's the amount of thought that they put into the plan to execute a 500-year-old massively powerful vampire. They go to a bar and they cross their fingers, but it works, I guess. I mean, Lottie is just a fucking genius, because as soon as she leaves Alice alone on the floor by the restrooms, Sabine shows up and kidnaps her. Just like that, just like we wrote it up. Step 1, finished, done. Step 2, what's the plan now that we've been kidnapped? Turns out there is no plan. I've already told you that the whole idea was that they go to a bar and they wait for everything else to figure itself out. Alice has no tools, no ideas, no secret weapon. She's also a baby vampire. Again, she's like 2 days old, so she has no access to the infinite powers that vampires eventually age into. Which, by the way, is another thing that pisses me off about this ending. Sabine, don't know if you forgot, but Sabine is 500 years old. She's apparently mastered the powers that vampires are supposed to have in this world, which are suggestion and also a form of mind reading. Like, Sabine is supposed to be able to read the general gist, like the emotions and the base thoughts of everybody that she interacts with if she wants to. And the only way to prevent that is to also be a vampire and dedicate literally years of your life to like building up the mental fortitude that's required to construct walls around your thoughts, so that way you can't be read anymore, which obviously Alice has not done. She's 2 days old. She's just a baby. And in her internal monologue, Alice is aware of this because she's constantly thinking to herself, oop, better not think about my murderous intent, better think about something else instead, so that way the Giga vampire who has mastered mind reading doesn't somehow sense my deep murderous intent right now. Which is really exactly the kind of thought, in my opinion, that would reveal the fact that you have murderous intent, but whatever, I guess. Somehow it's not relevant, because Sabine, for all intents and purposes in this scene, Sabine suddenly has no powers at all. She just like forgets how to do everything very conveniently for this ending, but whatever. Anyways, Alice is in this penthouse apartment along with Sabine. No weapon, no powers, no tools, no plan beyond this necklace that she always wears around her neck. So it's not even like she just brought it this time for this occasion, she always has it. But the necklace contains inside of it some dirt from her mother's grave, which graveyard dirt is like super effective against vampires, very good at making them unable to move. So especially seeing the fact that Sabine has hidden all tools inside of her house, anything that can be used for stabbing, Alice decides that her best bet, really her only bet, is to try to get Sabine to consume the graveyard dirt, which would incapacitate her, so that way, I don't know, Alice can like stab her with her heel or something. And this whole time, by the way, Sabine is just like, if I wanted to kill you, you would have already been dead, and like kind of trying to conspire with Alice to somehow take down Lottie, although what that means I'm not sure, considering Sabine could have just again killed her at any time, whatever. But eventually Alice is like, ooh, I see that you have some blood over there on your little kitchen serving cart. You have a little wine glass full of decanted blood. Can I have some? Because I'm also a vampire and not thinking murderous thoughts. And Sabine's like, yeah, sure, go grab it yourself. So Alice goes over, she fills 2 glasses with blood, dumps the graveyard dirt inside of one of the glasses and like swirls it a little bit with her hand, brings them over, thinks to herself, checkmate. But then that plan's foiled when Alice brings the glasses over and Sabine's like, oh, I don't drink that. You shouldn't have brought me that, because I guess she's like a real vampire and she doesn't drink decanted blood. She only drinks from the source, unlike these 21st century beta cucks. Whatever. Honestly, it tracks. Good for her. But yeah, I mean, that was Alice's entire singular plan, because she didn't go in with any plan to begin with. This was already an audible. And then, to solve the wound, right after Alice feels this crushing disappointment of her half-baked idea falling apart, she also notices that despite the fact that, again, Sabine has removed anything that could be used as a weapon from the apartment, just in case, underneath her lace dress, Sabine has showed up to this meeting wearing fucking chainmail. Do you need to hear that again? She's wearing fucking chainmail, and it's so goofy for no reason. I'm not sure if I can succinctly capture for you here how misaligned that is with the generally very somber, quiet, serious nature of this book. It's like if you were watching Chernobyl on TV and then randomly in like the second to last episode, as the meltdown is actively happening, we randomly cut to like a 3D CGI'd image of Jake the dog from Adventure Time just like running around inside of the power plant as it's melting down. It's actually laughable in the worst way. It makes this entire scene into one big joke, but it also represents honestly so well what I meant when I said earlier on that in the back half of the book, Sabine is just reduced to being a mustache twirling supervillain. Wearing chainmail under a lace dress to go and kidnap your ex's one night stand is 100% the behavior of somebody who practices their evil laugh in the mirror. Whatever. Anyways, at this point, for some reason, Sabine leans in to kiss Alice. I guess because she's like compelled by her or something. Maybe as a fuck you to Lottie, who I guess now she wants to kill. I don't know. Honestly, it felt pretty out of character for somebody who has been that obsessed with their ex for 200 years, but what the fuck do I know anymore about this woman? I mean, it's been 200 pages since her last meaningful POV chapter. But yeah, she's wearing chainmail, leaning in for the kiss, like, but then Alice is like, wait, hold on, babe. Before we hook up and I guess go and kill Lottie together, can I at least have the privilege of showering first inside of your super nice penthouse? And Sabine is like, sure, I guess. Sounds good. You go do that. So Alice goes to the bathroom. Woo! This is going to make me mad. This is going to make me mad just to talk about. Alice goes to the bathroom, she turns on the shower, and she starts singing. She starts singing a little song to make a bunch of noise to cover up for the fact that she is cracking off a piece of the bathroom countertop, a piece of the granite bathroom countertop with her bare hands, I guess vampire strength or whatever, but she takes a shard of this granite countertop that no one heard her remove because she was singing a little song. She strips, she gets in the shower with her shard of countertop, and then she waits for Sabine to join her, which apparently is a correct prediction, by the way, but really putting a lot of your eggs in one basket there when the entire murder attempt is predicated by whether or not Sabine will just think to join you in the shower when you've met her an hour ago. But in order to join her in the shower, you guessed it, Sabine has to remove her chainmail. She has to take off the chainmail that she's wearing, thereby removing her protection from the main method of vampire death. She takes it off, she frees herself from the weight of all of her responsibilities in the world. She gets in the shower, and then instantly Alice stabs her and she dies. Sabine doesn't even say anything in this scene. Her last words to Alice are just like, yeah, go have a shower. Like, there's not even a confrontation that happens. She's just fucking dead in this shower because of a shard of stone countertop. What? And I'm not even going to focus on this because, believe it or not, we actually have bigger fish to fry. There's even more to unpack. But Sabine is just so criminally wasted as a character. For this to be how she went out, like, how is that the best idea that you had? How do you not come up with anything better than getting stabbed in a shower with a piece of stone countertop secretly broken off the sink under the cover of Song. Like, whatever. Anyways, we're not even done. I'm gobsmacked reading this for obvious reasons. Honestly, I feel like I'm being punked, but true to form, she is dead. She does have nothing to say about that fact because she's dead. So in the last like 8 or 9 pages of this book, because again, this entire sequence is not very long. It all really comes at you fast. Alice gets out of the shower. She goes to hang out in the living room and she just waits forever until Lottie comes, because for some reason she knows that Lottie will come. Honestly, I don't remember why, but it's not relevant whatsoever. Eventually Lottie appears and she's like, whoa, you actually did it. Like, Sabine's done. That's awesome. And Alice reasonably is like, hey, so you said I wouldn't be a vampire anymore after Sabine died, and I appear to still be a vampire. So like, what's the deal with that? And Lottie's like, yeah, I mean, I did say that and it was bullshit. And then Alice, really, really pissed off and also simultaneously fearing for her life, because she remembers from the ends of Lottie's tale of woe that Lottie had killed one of her previous partners who had been turned into a vampire to like spare her the fate of being a vampire or whatever. That's a piece of lore I didn't mention, but it's true. But because of both of those things, because she's feeling some kind of way about it, Alice just sits there and watches as Lottie takes a sip of the cup from earlier that has the dirt from her mom's grave inside of it. And while Lottie is incapacitated from consuming the grave dirt, Alice goes over and she stabs her. Lottie is now dead. And textually, what this book is telling you, not showing you, what it is telling you with this choice, verbatim in the text, is that Lottie is also evil. In that moment, Lottie changes. All her pretenses of confusion, of kindness, of compassion die away, and so does the image of the beautiful girl perched on the bed in the dark, curl stains violet. In its place, Alice sees the one who danced with Sabine through stolen halls, who butchered families in their homes, who let girls die because she couldn't bear to sleep alone. Lottie is apparently just as bad. She is just as deserving of death as Sabine, as our mustache-twirling supervillain. And this decision, this twist for these characters, I think is even worse than what happens in the back half of Sabine's entire arc. I'm sure that there are more charitable interpretations than what I will be telling you right now when it comes to what happens in this book, but what exactly are you trying to say when you make that choice as an author? What in your head, beyond like the feral goblin on your shoulder that loves the drama, makes you think, yeah, that is an appropriate and meaningful twist that will just change everything inside of this story? Let's extrapolate this out a little bit to the real world, okay? Let's subtract the vampires. What are you trying to say when you imply that just because you were trapped in an abusive dynamic with an evil ex-partner that you did not consent to, by the way, that you did not choose, that you cannot control and cannot do anything about? What are you saying exactly when you imply that because all of that is true, you should just be alone and suffer forever? Because opening a potential partner, even if they're aware of it, to danger that could come from your ex potentially, is actually just as bad. It's just as bad as perpetrating that abuse yourself. And that's already pretty bad for me when it comes to how this author is handling the depiction of abuse in fiction, but the additional layer of this also being about lesbians is actually nuts. Because, okay, let's just make Sabine after the breakup representative of the general danger, homophobia, malevolence that queer people have faced throughout history for a second, that kind of haunts them, right? That haunts the love lives of queer people in history. In this book, just because it's dangerous, just because the person that you love could be put in harm's way, you are now evil, fundamentally deserving of death for pursuing a relationship. You are evil for not just dying alone like you're supposed to. And that might sound dramatic. I am going to be the friend that's too woke here for a second, but I'm doing it for a reason, because you can't divorce a book like this from its historical context. It was, and in many places still is, dangerous to be outwardly queer, to be in a queer relationship. And already we were going off the rails. Already there started to exist a creeping feeling of dread when Lottie was revealed to have killed one of her previous partners. That choice, which at the time when you're reading it feels extremely out of character. It feels like something that there's just not a chance in the world that she would have done. That, in combination with the ending, where I guess it's revealed that she was actually secretly evil all along, is just such a character assassination of somebody who, like it or not, is representative both of victims of abuse who are trying to re-enter the world in the wake of their horrible relationships, and also queer people who are forcibly closeted, who are kept alone, but who still try to find love and light inside of their lives anyways. Lottie is your representative of that. And the book is also engaging with the themes I'm talking about naturally throughout like the long saga chronology through all of these years for these women. This isn't just shit I'm making up inside of my head. This is dialogue that the book started started that the book is participating in and throwing in a twist that, well, actually, Lottie is just as bad as Sabine. She's probably been just as bad as Sabine all along. I guess it's interesting in terms of drama, in terms of entertainment, but it muddles the rest of the book thematically to the point of meaninglessness because, again, I finished this book and I had no fucking idea anymore what it was supposed to say. All of the complexity just disappears entirely for both characters as they died, and they don't even talk about it. They don't even have a chance to defend themselves or to explain themselves on page. Sabine doesn't even get last words, like she's barely a character in her last chapter. And Lottie never defends herself. The book never explores any of the complicated traumas and feelings that might have led her to make these decisions, you know, that might have nuanced what is being told to us, again, textually on page about what a bad person she was. Nothing challenges that because she just dies. And it's a kind of ending too that makes you look upon the rest of the book a lot less charitably. Because the ending was so stupid and frivolous, now I think that the rest of the book was infinitely more boring and pointless. Now I'm just having thoughts like, isn't it a little bit weird how in this story that is in large part about gendered expectations and violence, isn't it weird how in a story that claims to be about those things, almost all of the violence is by women and for women, despite how much they all hate men? And isn't it weird how women only take lessons from that abuse in order to then go on to abuse other women inside of this book? Don't get me wrong, abuse in queer relationships absolutely exists, and it makes for meaningful stories as long as you do something with it. But considering that nothing was done with it, and I guess everyone was evil and awful the whole time, of course I'm going to wonder what the point of all of that was. Like, why did I just read 500 pages about women beating on each other only for nobody to have anything to say? The end of this book felt like a fucking Redditor's opinion on Amber Heard. It was just bad, and I've only gotten angrier ever since finishing it last fall. The next time I buy a V.E. Schwab book that the internet tells me is good, somebody needs to crack off a piece of stone countertop and stab me with it, because at the big age of 25, I should no longer be doing this to myself. I should have already learned, actually, after Addie LaRue. I should not be caught dead picking up more books by this author, and yet somehow I know I will. Next up, in 5th place, we have a book that should be a lot shorter to talk about because it doesn't require nearly as much context, and that is How to End a Love Story. This was one of the first books I read in 2025. Very much started off with a whimper last year. In this book, we are following a woman named Helen, who is the best-selling author of a popular young adult series. And Helen, at the start of this book, has just been offered the opportunity to turn her books into a TV show, which has been one of her biggest dreams for basically as long as she's been writing. It's really, really good news. But that brief, wonderful moment of feeling like everything in her life might possibly have amounted to something is instantly torpedoed when she sees one of the 2 primary executive producers on the project is going to be, oh god, the same man that killed her sister in a tragic car accident when they were teenagers. The love interest in this book is the man that killed her sister. Just let that sink in for a second. Don't get me wrong, this is something that's pretty traumatic for both of them. What happened was her sister was really suicidal and just decided one day to run into traffic, and he was traffic. So he's the one who killed her, but it's not really like he could have done anything about it. But I don't know, man, like if that's me and it's been 20 years and I have an established career and I'm living my life trying to move on from this horrible event, and I get the offer to work on a project that is adapting the book of the sister of the girl who died horribly and I killed her and I'm very traumatized about it. And I know that we both know that I was a part of that tragic death of your sister. I think I would probably take any other job for literally everybody's well-being, including my own. I think the absolute last thing I would do in that situation is taint what should be a defining accomplishment of this poor woman's artistic career. I would probably avoid forcing her to work with me on that thing for no reason. On a fundamental level, it is impossible to root for this couple after realizing what this man has done. His internal monologue about this, by the way, is essentially just, ooh, probably shouldn't do it. This could be a really bad thing to do, but I don't know, man. Tough times out here. Man's gotta eat, you know? Meanwhile, he's an executive producer in Hollywood who owns property in Los Angeles. Like, times are not really that tough if you own a bungalow in Los Angeles. Let's be so honest here. And the book tries quite hard afterwards to trick you into thinking that he's just a really nice and thoughtful guy, but the truth is, no remotely nice or thoughtful guy would ever have ended up in this situation, regardless of what his actions afterwards are. He is evil. Don't believe the lies that they're trying to tell you. Because even though this book very badly wanted me to forget that these were the circumstances of their budding relationship, I, for one, never forgot. Never left my mind the whole time I was reading this. I thought that he should just leave her alone. Anyways, that's just one of the problems with this book. The reason that this is above Barrier Bones and The Midnight Soil, despite my impassioned rant about the ending of that book, is because at least for the majority of that book, I feel like it was competently written. It was pretty enjoyable to read. This one, not not so much. You might think from what I've described so far about the plot of this book that this ends up being like a very romantic, moving portrait of collectively choosing to move on from trauma and grief with the people that you love in your life. In a sense, it's trying to do that. In a sense, it's trying to do a lot of other things as well, and none of them feel very tonally compatible with each other. Pretty soon after the traumatic re-meet cute inside of the writer's room, we start getting these weird found family rom-com style scenes where like Helen takes an edible and they're all in the woods together on like a bonding retreat. Oh no, she's super stoned and she accidentally falls into Grant, and both of them just go tumbling down a hill together, and then they have to make their way back to the cabin. And it's clearly supposed to be the kind of, ooh, that's crazy, funny haha situation that you find in a rom-com, except this isn't really a rom-com. Like, that's the man who killed her sister, which makes it kind of difficult to laugh at that. It's also, I would say, unexpectedly really smutty in a way that also felt pretty tonally inappropriate. Honestly, that part was better than a lot of the attempts at comedy, because I do actually believe that two traumatized adults navigating a brutal situation probably would start hooking up if the other person was hot, just as an act of self-destructive chaos during a doom spiral. But there was like a lot of smut, and the way that it was written, it just felt so disparate, both from everything in the book that led up to it and also everything that came after. And especially in a book like this, where it's like, there's some real shit that these characters have to work through and deal with. I didn't feel like they had any emotional chemistry. It's like, instead of writing in any meaningful romantic development and chemistry between the characters, that's where the author was like, no, I'll just do like 5 different smut scenes in a row over the course of 50 pages. But the smut, the comedy, the drama, these are just a few examples of everything that's been thrown into this massive, mediocre, unmixed cocktail of things that the author is trying to do, except because this book is only 350 pages, it doesn't have time to do all of those things particularly well. As another example, for a second you start to think that maybe this book will try to examine difficult relationships that parents can have with their children, especially Helen coming from an Asian household. Her parents pretty suddenly become a massive part of this book in the last third. But instead of actually exploring those themes, we just introduce them and then don't instead. Same thing with Helen's grief. Like, Helen doesn't have a very positive opinion of her dead sister. You can tell that she's not really making much of an effort to understand why her sister might have taken her own life, and she just sees the whole thing in this pretty angry and self-centered way, which these are real emotions that real people have and work through when it comes to people that they love who leave them. Like, the way that we work through these things is not always sunshine and rainbows and I miss you, I will only ever remember the happiest parts of your life. Real people have ugly thoughts, real people are complicated. But again, the book just wastes so much time on like camping and banging and not talking about feelings that the entire emotional arc of this book is just reduced to the end, which is when Helen's parents come and visit her on set. They realize that she's banging Grant, she's banging the guy who killed their daughter and her sister. I mean, like you might imagine, they feel some kind of way about that. They feel some kind of way about the fact that also Helen didn't tell them. And then the icing on the cake is that in the middle of dealing with this, Helen also gets hit by a car, which is wild. Like, that's a choice for the author to make, but she goes to the hospital, it has a bunch of like tearful emotional conversations or whatever that also kind of don't do anything. Like, they don't actually move the plot. You're just getting an idea of where the characters are emotionally because they're yelling at each other. But then after these conversations where the narrative is establishing the current present tense feelings of this woman, her family, of Grant, right? You just get a time skip to when most of this shit is already resolved. The resolution of this book is so fast and toothless that I don't buy that anybody in this book has actually worked through anything. We just get a super brief montage of Helen writing a letter to her sister and like maybe starting to work through grief and acknowledging that it's a problem for her. Her mom maybe kind of implies that she's not going to write Helen out of the will overseeing Grant, but they don't actually talk about it. And then another time skip and it's the movie premiere, and Helen and Grant talk and they make up, and I guess they live happily ever after, because if you forgot, this is a romance novel called How to End a Love Story, and the author decided to very quickly end the love story. And because it's a romance, that means now they have to be happy together until the end of time, just because the author told me it would happen. And I just don't buy it personally. I mean, I buy that they'll be happy together until like next Tuesday, maybe, but clearly nobody in this book has meaningfully worked through any of their issues. Everything about the plot of this just feels grossly mishandled and unconvincing. Helen and Grant are either careening towards breaking up within the next month or like a shotgun wedding followed by a very angry, grisly divorce. Like, there's no good off-ramp into happiness for this couple because there never should have been a fucking on-ramp. And on top of all of that, on top of this book trying to do everything and doing nothing well and generating the least rootable couple of all time, it's also boring. It's also not very fun to read. Like, the circumstances are so dramatic, and for what? And to not even entertain me? This just wasn't good. This is also depreciated in my memory the more time that has passed. You'll notice that's a theme for this video. Next up, in 4th place, we have A Dark and Drowning Tide. And if I had a nickel for every time I talked about a sapphic fantasy novel in this video that ended up recharacterizing its protagonists entirely in the last 5% of the book, in order to torpedo whatever thematic idea it had going on in favor of something significantly more annoying and regressive, I would have 2 nickels somehow. That feels like it should be a pretty niche thing in a book, but this year apparently it's not. This book is about these two women, Lorelai and Sylvia, who are kind of academic rivals. They're both competing for the attention of the same mentor inside of their field, and the two of them, plus the mentor, plus 4 other people, all go on this expedition quest in order to find a magical spring that represents like the root of all magic. It's very powerful. And they're sent on this mission by the king, who is ruling this sort of federation-style kingdom that is comprised of what was once a bunch of individual nations that were then either conquered or like bullied through negotiation into ultimately uniting under this one ruler. And because there are so many groups of people inside of this kingdom, the seat of power right now is like fragile at best. Hence why this guy probably wants the source of all magical power on his side. But about 2 seconds into this voyage, they're traveling by boat, a wrench is thrown into things when Lorelai discovers that this mentor figure has been murdered. She's been killed. It is obviously foul play. Something is afoot. And for circumstantial reasons, the only person that Lorelai is absolutely positive could not have committed the murder is Sylvia. So the two of them are kind of forced to work together in order to solve the crime. One thing about me, I love solving crime. I love some enemies that are forced to cooperate together on some kind of shared task in fiction. Never say to me that I'm not an easy woman to please, okay? There are things that make me happy in this life, believe it or not, based on this video. But despite having a mystery that at times I would definitely say was at least kind of compelling, this book overall, even before we got to the parts that really pissed me off, was kind of just a lukewarm beige experience. The writing is fine. The atmosphere is fine. The chemistry between the two characters should have been really good based on the circumstances, but something about the banter just didn't really hit for me. But it was fine. They were fine. This book had all of the makings for almost the entire time of a perfectly average 2.5 to 3 stars. But the ending of this book, again, just like with Barrier Bones and the Midnight Soil, the ending of this book was so fucking stupid. From about 75% onwards, I started catching a whiff that something bad was going to happen and I wasn't gonna like it. But the entire time I was like, surely this isn't going where I think it's going. No author in the right mind would choose that as a destination for this kind of story, especially when provided with the full set of potential options that are guaranteed when you have creative freedom, right? Like, there's just no way we end up going where I think we're going. And I kept feeling that way all the way up to the last word on the last page of this book. Except then the book was over and there still hadn't been a twist that would make things better. In fact, things had just been made worse. And I was at that point forced to accept that maybe it was just bad all along. But what am I talking about? Thanks for asking. Important context for everything I'm about to tell you. We spend the first 3/4 of this book in some way negotiating with the price of empire, right? Lorelai, as a character, our protagonist, is very clearly fantasy Jewish coded. Lorelai has spent her entire life forced to live in what is quite literally a walled ghetto that her people aren't allowed to leave unless they get special royal permission for something. Her people are called the Yeva in this universe, and everyone hates the Yeva. Everyone blames the Yeva for everything. Lorelai hates herself and also blames herself for everything. And her core trauma associated with that is that when she was a kid, she and her younger brother were walking around the edges of her city by the wall. Like, they were still inside, mind you, but they were by the wall. And a bunch of random guys from fantasy Europe just barge in through the gate in front of them and start like breaking a bunch of windows in stores and just generally being a menace. But then when they see Lorelai and her brother, they just walk up to them and start beating her brother to death in front of her, facing, of course, 0 consequences, because who gives a fuck what happens to the Yeva in this universe? Not the king, not the monarch. But because of that experience, and really all of the experiences she's ever had in her life, Lorelai doesn't like the Empire. The Empire does not like Lorelai, and the only reason that she's on this expedition is because she was taken under the wing of her mentor academically, who has like royal clout inside of the court, and is thereby able to grant her mobility through the kingdom in a bunch of different ways. But when she tells the king that this happens, when she alerts him to this murder, the king sends her a letter. He fucking hits her up on Discord and is like, hey, so you can solve this for me? And that'd be really good. That'd be great for everybody involved. But I just wanted to let you know that if you don't figure it out, I will tell everybody that it's you, and we will kill you instead as retribution for this crime, because you're Yeva, and therefore you're fundamentally evil in some way. You probably do a little bit of murdering. I bet you've done murder before, right? Good luck solving the crime though. Wishing you the best. Like, pretty corrupt, right? So yeah, that's the Empire through the lens of Lorelai. Sylvia's a little bit different just because she is loyal to the king, seemingly on the sole basis of having served with him in the military and they were friends, and he just, I guess, seems like a cool guy. Actually worth noting with that this is true for all of the other people on this expedition. They're all from different places, but they were all close personal friends with the king. And let me tell you, the bullshit you're getting from his friends about how the king just like really seems like a chill guy and he's probably not that bad, he's just doing his best, really cuts him an unreal amount of slack inside of this book in the court of public opinion with all of the shit that's going down. But regardless of the fact that I guess they're friends, Sylvia is still very much a victim of the Empire, and that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, Sylvia is a pacifist. She was like kind of forced to serve in the military circumstantially, but she's very, very anti-war. She's anti-violence, and considering the the fact that this empire was built off of the backs of endless war, classic imperialism, it's not something that she's really a fan of. And also, B, she comes from a part of this federation, from a nation that is on the brink of revolution right now, because they feel like they're being erased culturally by this new empire. They feel like their freedom of self-governance and also their identity might be under threat. Some might say that they feel like they're being colonized. And they would be right. That's exactly what's happening. And at this point, with what you know now, I would suggest that you just pause, as I did, and just think for a second about where this book seems like it's probably going thematically. Just think about that while I tell you the rest of what happens. But moving on, last big person I want to mention before we get to the actual resolution of this book, we also have the culprit, the murderer of the mentor from the beginning of the book. And that ends up being this girl named Adelheid. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not an audiobook warrior, but her name is Adelheid. And it turns out that Adelheid killed the mentor because she's trying to fuck over the expedition, which obviously she was not very appeased when everybody just collectively decided to keep going anyways. But the reason she did it, the reason why she doesn't want the expedition to happen, is because if the king is able to get this magical spring power, inevitably he's going to use it to fund more war and also to protect the borders of all of the places that he's conquered through war. And Adelheid, we find out, is from a territory inside of this empire where tale as old as time, it's like the fucking Fire tribe from Yona of the Dawn. All of the young men in this town, once they come of age, are being constantly conscripted into the army. So because there is a severe lack of young laborers, their population is aging with nobody to take care of them. The crops are constantly dying. They live in like permanent destitute poverty. And they're also, if I recall correctly, on the current border of the empire. So they're basically fodder. They're just absorbing all of the attacks that they didn't ask for while also being stripped of all of their resources. Like, it's not a great fate. It's not something that would make me swear allegiance to the king personally, if that was happening to everybody that I knew and loved. But yeah, when Lorelai figures out it was her and she explains herself at like the 3/4 mark, as the reader, you're like, wait, this is the villain? I feel like she might have a point. I feel like she might be onto something. Maybe the supreme ruler of our new grand empire shouldn't have more power that he could then use to churn through and kill even more of the people that we love from our respective communities. I can maybe see why you would try and sabotage that kind of mission. A quote from later on that I feel like very succinctly captures what I'm saying. "Why are you doing this?" Sylvia shouted over the howl of the storm. "There is no other way forward," Adelheid answered. "Wilhelm, the king, has sat by idly while our harvests rotted in the fields, while our homes burned, while my family and subjects have starved, and now he plans to sacrifice us all for his own ambitions. I cannot allow it. We would have helped you. I would have helped you." Adelheid curled her lip. "You have always been so naive, Sylvia. By the time Wilhelm is through, this country will be ruined. Whatever influence you have will be gone. What culture you cherish will be diluted when we are all forced to assimilate. Some of us will be snuffed out entirely." She flung her arm out, as if gesturing over the vast expanse of Brunestad. "Open your eyes. We are relics already. Can you bring yourself to hasten our demise?" Villain, by the way. Irredeemable murderer, by the way, from what the ending of this book wants you to think, I guess. Because then, of course, because you can't have the villain be right and reasonable and also evil all at the same time, Adelheid just starts like lying a bunch and doing a little bit of betraying and like going mad with power, as you do, because only somebody insane would refuse to swear fealty to their colonizer, I guess. Same thing, by the way, with Sylvia's mom, who's like the ruler of that nation that she's from and who's organizing the rebellion that's trying to protect their culture and freedom. You'll note reading this book that she also has to be evil. She has to be like the worst mom of all time because, again, I guess only evil people resist the status quo inside of this fantasy novel. But whatever, more on that later. Adelheid is eventually defeated when they all find the magic spring, and the spring can tell somehow that Sylvia is of pure heart and mind, so it just gives her for free its infinite power. It rejected Adelheid, by the way, because again, she's too evil. It gives all of its power to Sylvia, which is like a nuts amount of power, by the way. Like, she can now explode people with just her mind levels of power, and evil Adelheid takes the power for herself while also paying a terrible cost. So the two of them have like a titan battle for a second. Obviously Sylvia wins because she's the good guy and only losers lose. And Sylvia is so benevolent and kind also that they choose to spare Adelheid for the time being and like take her back to face trial, which Adelheid agrees to, except then as soon as Sylvia turns around because she's evil and like a conniving betrayer, Adelheid tries to kill her. So Lorelai has to step in and kill Adelheid first so that way she can't do that. So yeah, now Adelheid is dead after doing a bunch of irredeemable villain shit. Sylvia and Lorelai and the remaining rest of the expedition, they go home and they confront the king about his crimes. Or so I thought. That's where I thought that this book would go. I thought that they would go and confront the king after we spent this entire book learning about all of the ways that he's a horrible despot, despite apparently also being kind of a chill guy. But then Instead of that, instead of confronting the king that if Sylvia wanted to, she could burst every blood vessel in this guy's body all at once with her mind. He can't do fucking anything against her. But instead of doing that and like, I don't know, leveraging this power to enact meaningful change, they go and talk to him and they're like, yeah, Adelheid was kind of a traitor, isn't that crazy? And he's like, yeah, that's crazy. It's not who I would have expected. And then he calls out his guards and prepares to arrest them when he finds out that the magical spring power all went to Sylvia. Reasonable response, I guess, when you're a fucking tyrant. But then Sylvia is like, I can't make this up. I can't make this up. Sylvia is like, my guy, you have to chill out. I'm still loyal to you. And as long as you don't force me to marry you because I'm gay and this is my girlfriend, I'll use my powers as your general for whatever you want. I have no other demands. We could put down some uprisings together. Oh, like the uprising my mom is planning. We should exile her, by the way, because it's pretty fucked up that she's trying to do an uprising. Pretty fucked up to have the audacity to dream of an independent future of self-sovereignty when instead you can just gain infinite power and then instantly swear your fealty again to an evil tyrannical monarch like you. Obviously she doesn't say that in as many words, but that's really the gist. That's like her offer to him. Trade offer, I give you infinite power, you let me have girlfriends. Like, what? And the king is like surprised by this, by the way, as am I, and he's like, wow, that's really nice. I guess I don't have to arrest you. And then he turns to Lorelai, who is just watching all of this as a member of an oppressed minority that has been oppressed her entire life, who literally watched her little brother get beaten to death in front of her by people who look just like that fucking king. The king looks at Lorelai and he's like, you know, because you're such a special little guy, I think I'll give you, just you, nobody else from your entire community, I will give you the rights of free movement through my kingdom, what literally every other citizen has other than the Yevas. And on top of that, because I'm so handsome and I'm a pretty chill guy, I will also deign to appoint you as my personal chamberlain. He offers her a job as his personal chamberlain, and Lorelai has a brief moment of lucidity followed by extreme selfishness where she's like, Lorelai hardly knew what to feel. She nearly keeled over from the shock of it, the thrill of getting what she wanted after 5 long years. It wasn't exactly happiness. Ziegler, her mentor, had served as Wilhelm's chamberlain and resented every moment of it. It had trapped her. A gilded chain wound tight around her throat. But with this position, Lorelai would have the ear of the most powerful man in Brunestad, a man who needed something from her. She could make herself indispensable to him, and with that salary, she would never want for research funds again. She would be a fool to decline. Thank you, Your Majesty, she bowed. I will serve you as best I can. And this is just like cuckoo bananas to me because throughout this book, Lorelai has pretended to care a little bit about her people. When Adelheid was explaining her rationale and she was thinking about whether to betray everybody by siding with her, she was really only considering it because she was able to negotiate Adelheid into promising freedom for the Yeva. And she spends a lot of this book justifiably very resentful for the way that her people are treated. But yeah, I mean, we get to the end and she's like, maybe it's okay, actually, if my friends and family continue to die in the streets all of the time. Maybe it's all right as long as I can, like, have enough money to read whatever books I like. Maybe it's fine that they can't ever leave their ghetto, because at least I can. We don't really hear any more about her people for the rest of this book, beyond just the fact that sometimes in the epilogue, sometimes Lorelai goes home to have tea with her family and tell them about all of the court gossip that's currently happening. Like, that's the update. Truly nothing about how the situation might have changed for them, probably because the situation didn't change, and it was only convenient to ever mention her fantasy ghetto just to set up how tragic her backstory was and how like self-loathing she is, and also to trick you into thinking that she actually cares about the evil empire that put them there. Like, what the fuck? Because the thing with this ending that really pisses me off, that really grates my gears, isn't even the fact that the politics are that bad. It's the fact that it's extremely out of what is established as their characters inside of this book for Sylvia and Lorelai to behave this way as they're like happily ever after in the ending. I felt like I was getting punked again. Like Sylvia, the pacifist, agreeing to fight in wars and put down violent uprisings in order to protect the imperial crown so that way he can go and conquer more things and do more war, and Lorelai leaving all of her people to rot while she gets hers as a member of court. Like, it's such a nuts ending to this book, to the point where, again, to the very last page, I was like, surely this isn't happening. Surely this is not where we're going. Like, there's going to be some kind of twist. This isn't actually how it ends. But no, there's no twist. We just get an epilogue that's like fluffy and cute about how Sylvia was away fighting in wars wars, as she does now, probably subjugating her own people or people just like her, girly things. And while she was off at war, Lorelai was like, does she even love me anymore? Because I haven't heard from her in months. But it turns out it's just that Sylvia's letters, which she was writing, weren't getting delivered. They weren't getting sent to the right place. And she's loved her all along and will forever. And now they're getting married. For the record, it's not like this is meant to be, at least in any obvious way, a really complicated, gritty, realistic ending. Making the most out of a terrible situation, this terrible system that you can't topple, but you can maybe like find a moment of happiness within. No, the tone is uplifting. It's quirky. It's cute. This is a happy ending for these characters. It's like the author, while writing this book, had some kind of traumatic brain injury that led her to forget all of the themes that she was writing about, and also how all of her characters act, or I don't know, she just got bored or like confused by her own world that she built. I don't know how it's possible to have this bad of an ending. This is like if Odysseus, at the end of the Odyssey, alone in his boat, all of his friends are dead, he's deeply traumatized. This is like if Odysseus realized in that moment that he forgot one of his favorite togas back in Troy, and so he just turns around and goes back to get it. This is Odysseus saying, oh, wait, maybe Scylla had a point when she was killing my crew. Maybe I should go and serve her for the rest of my life as her ocean chamberlain. And I don't know, man, like if Penelope and Telemachus get killed by suitors in the meantime, kind of sucks for them. I got mine. I just don't understand how we ended up here. This is the worst ending, the worst 10% proportional to the rest of the book by far over the past year. The next book I'm talking about also has a bad ending, but the problems in that, they go deeper. I actively regret rounding this up to 2 stars on Goodreads. I think about that sometimes, because you just shouldn't be allowed to get away with something like this in 2026. Why is my sapphic fantasy novel pro-colonialism? What's going on? Who wrote this? What's your target audience? Like, who's out here writing about gays and then also sucking off the monarchy in the same book? I don't understand. Hello from the future. I wanted some natural light because I'm gonna eventually need to use the whiteboard for this section. In third place, we have Rock, Paper, Scissors, this year's loaded thriller by one of my new enemies, Alice Feeney. I read this book pretty close to the beginning of the year, and when I was prepping for this video, I couldn't tell you why, I couldn't tell you how, but even though I remembered absolutely nothing about the plot of this book, I could not bring myself to leave it off of this list. All I remembered about this was how much I hated it. I repressed everything else, but fortunately for you, I spent a few hours skimming back through this book to remind myself of what happened, and so I would have actual reasons for the way that I feel. And in doing so, I actually bumped this book down 3 spots on this list. It was supposed to be in 6th place. Reading back my notes after I had practically forced myself to relive this entire experience, I could not justify it being better than the likes of Bury Our Bones and The Midnight Soil. Like, that's not true. It would be unfair to that book. This is the unsub in this week's episode of let's take a real medical condition that real non-murdering people have, and let's put it into my thriller just for fun, even though the only things I know about the condition come from the first paragraph of the AI summary on Google. And while we're at it, let's make the person who has this medical condition morally reprehensible as a twist that you couldn't have possibly seen coming. That's what this is, and usually the offenders of decisions like this enjoy a little bit of DID as a treat. They like a little bit of schizophrenia, maybe a bit of complex post-traumatic stress, but in this book we get a slightly more unique heavy hitter in prosopagnosia, otherwise known as face blindness. The only thing that Alice Feeney seems to know about face blindness is best represented as ooga booga, man no recognize people. Man no see faces, and therefore man no even recognize loved ones, because nobody with face blindness has ever learned to cope with the disorder through learning how to recognize people with things other than their face. That's not something that's ever happened, apparently. But before I tell you how all of this impacts our lovely narrative here, let me first briefly explain to you the premise of this story. In this book, Adam, who has face blindness, and Amelia, his wife, are a married couple that are going through a really rough patch in their lives, and as a kind of last-ditch effort to save the marriage, Amelia enters herself into a raffle through work, and she ends up winning this fun vacation in the Scottish Highlands. And in her head, she's like, this is amazing, this is the best thing that could have possibly happened, this is going to revitalize my entire marriage, we have to go. So that's what they do. They drive 8 hours in the middle of a blizzard, apparently in whiteout conditions, which if you have to suspend your disbelief to believe that they're able to drive 8 hours to a place they've never been before in blizzard whiteout conditions, you're in for a bad time with this book, but whatever, they get there. Turns out that the place that they're supposed to be staying is really spooky and weird. Turns out it's actually an abandoned chapel that has been 90% of the way converted into a house, sort of a la Airbnb, but with absolutely zero internet presence. And the chapel is in the middle of nowhere, of course, and again, it's snowing because it's winter, and winter is snowy, and there's a blizzard that's happening right now. So they're kind of trapped, and from the moment they arrive, it's just like incredibly suspicious and a little bit sinister in terms of aura. The biggest red flag to me was the fact that several hours after they get there, because I guess their first thought was not to explore the entire property that they're staying at, whatever. Several hours after they get there, they finally go and check out the bedroom, and they find out that the bedroom in this chapel is completely identical to the bedroom that they have at their house. It's got the same furniture furniture, the room is orientated the same way, which is pretty creepy. It's not something that I would like to see if I'm staying at an abandoned chapel in the middle of the woods, miles away from society. But because nobody in books like this ever takes the hint that something nefarious is at play, they react to this revelation by just feeling slightly alarmed and deciding to change nothing and sleep in the room anyways. So fast forwarding through a lot of nonsense that's really just, ooh, something in the house feels really sinister. What's the deal with that? Are we being watched? Is my husband and or wife hiding something from me that I don't know, just like I'm hiding something from them that they don't know, and neither do you, the reader? Fast forwarding through all of that nonsense to just paint the broad strokes of the twists in this book, because 85% of the reason I hate this so much is because the twists are so stupid. This book has a terminal case of what I would like to call twistitis, where the last 50 pages of the book are just 5 different twists layered on top of each other, all increasingly unbelievable, especially in tandem, which I guess would maybe appease somebody who just wanted to read something that's kooky crazy. But unfortunately, I actually care about whether or not a book like this makes sense. So yeah, it was a problem for me. This might also be a little bit all over the place as I weave in some of my other complaints, but let's discuss. I'm gonna be using the whiteboard to write them all down, so that way you can remember all of the dumb stuff that's layered on top of each other in this book. Important context, the structure of this book is dual POV. You're getting Adam and Amelia in first person as they're exploring this chapel, and then also you're getting these letters about every 3rd chapter or so that were written by Amelia every single year of their marriage, kind of chronicling the backstory of their relationship before everything went to shit, or so you think, because the first twist is that those letters weren't written by Amelia. They were actually written by a woman named Robin, who was Adam's first wife. And the backstory there is that Robin walked in on Adam cheating on her with her best friend on their 10th anniversary. And the book tries to explain this in a way that I find to be truly incredible. I'll give you exactly one guess as to what Adam says when he's caught in bed with a woman who is not his wife. I'll give you one guess as to what Adam, who has face blindness, says in this situation. Yeah, he says that he thought that it was Robin the entire time. The book has tried to foreshadow this a little bit by talking in previous letters about how, oh, Amelia changed her haircut to be the same as Robin's, and they work at the same place, so they kind of smell the same and wear similar clothes. And Amelia apparently is starting to suppress her accent. They're all from England, but she's from a different part of England that is fairly distinct. But now apparently they sound kind of similar as well, so it was only a matter of time before Adam would just forget who his wife was and sleep with somebody else because he got confused. Fucking face blindness, am I right? Don't you hate it when a condition that apparently, did you know, 1 in 50 people have in some form? Don't you hate it when that means that none of those people can recognize anybody that they ever interact with at all by anything, even things like the context of the situation and the rest of their body and their voice or general vibe? Did you know that face blindness actually has this really scary, unfortunate side effect that nobody talks about, where you're actually guaranteed to cheat on your wife at some point because of your condition? Honestly, it's really sad. This is something I think needs a lot more awareness. Even if you want to be extremely charitable and you want to forgive the book by justifying it as maybe he was just lying and generally being awful, we'll come back to this later, because Adam's face blindness matters exactly 2 times in this book, and both of them are horrible. It's not just this one. But yeah, Adam cheats on Robin with Amelia, and then within a period of what seems to be in-universe days, Robin moves out, they get divorced, Amelia moves in, and then Amelia and Adam get remarried using the same engagement ring that he married Robin with previously. Honestly, this twist, face blindness aside, I actually thought was really interesting. Finding out that those letters that you've been reading for the entire book are not written by Amelia is pretty neat. It recontextualizes a lot of the rest of the book in an interesting way. But as you can see, we have a lot of room left on this board to completely ruin this temporary feeling of intrigue and promise. Now, 2 years later, Robin is living at a guest house at, you guessed it, the chapel. In the 2 years that have passed, all of her hair has gone gray, and she's also living almost exclusively on tinned food like sardines. That's just what happens when you get divorced. It's a side effect that 4 out of 5 doctors will not warn you about. But turns out, twist 1B, Robin is the one who has planned this entire trip. She is the one who wanted to get Amelia and Adam out into a chapel in the middle of nowhere. You might think to kill them, but no, actually. The reason why she has gone through all of this trouble to bring them out here is because she wants to hand deliver Adam this letter, to basically force an ultimatum upon him based on the information that he will peruse, that we will soon talk about. All of the other creepy bullshit that's been going on for like 70% of this book is some combination of Robin just fucking with them because she's mad, and Adam just generally wanting to leave because the trip sucks, so he's trying to sabotage it by making things really eerie, but nothing is actually that grim or evil in reality. But while we are here, now that we know that this was all engineered by Robin, can we just go back to the fact that Amelia and Adam are on this vacation solely because Amelia won it via email in a raffle at work? Robin's entire plan rests on the idea that, oh, the thief that stole my husband won't be able to resist this kind of steal for a vacation. Like, if at any point, either of them, by the way, either of them had considered that the email might be suspicious, or I don't know, they wanted to like Google where they're staying and find out if it's real, or just like look up the check-in time, or if they would have to bring their own towels. If at any point Amelia or Adam had looked into this, or I don't know, it's supposed to be a work raffle, if Amelia had ever talked to anybody at work, even one time, about the fact that this raffle was going on, they wouldn't have gone to this chapel. The only reason why they're at this chapel is because they're stupid. In no universe would you catch me driving 8 hours in a blizzard to a place I can't even look up on Google Maps. That's just not happening because I'm not fucking crazy, but whatever. I mean, I guess she knows the two of them well enough to know that this is still going to work because they don't even question it. They just show up. They're at the chapel. They've been at the chapel. What else happens? What other twists do we got? So this was the first big one, and I'm going to try to give you the other 5 in relatively fast succession, and then we can unpack them at the end. We'll see if I actually stick to that or if I get on a tangent, but we're at the point where Robin has written Adam a letter, and she basically locks him inside of the chapel while he reads it and makes his decision. And in this letter, you learn some things. Context for the second twist is that professionally, Adam is a screenwriter, and he's always wanted to write his own stuff, but that's really hard when you're making movies. So he's built his career adapting the work of this particular really famous, really reclusive writer named Henry Winter, who previously to working with Adam, who at the time was very much an unknown, had refused to let anybody adapt his work, even like AAA screenwriters, big directors. And twist 2 is that Henry Winter is actually Robin's dad. And Adam didn't know that the entire time that he was married to Robin, because Robin and Henry were estranged. Robin had reached out to him to make the adaptations happen in secret because she wanted to support Adam's dreams. So yeah, that's a twist to him, but the actual twist for us, the audience, is that Henry Winter was evil. He was like turbo evil. He would cut off Robin's hair in her sleep. He wrote these super scary books that, for various reasons, Robin always suspected were based on his true experiences as a psychopath. And most importantly, Robin is also pretty sure that Henry Winter either directly drowned her mom in the bath or at least bullied her and was so awful to her for so long that it pushed her to suicide. That, I think, explains why they were estranged, because I too would be estranged from my dad, I think, in that situation. Twist 3 required context is that Adam also has a dead mom, and his mom died in a traumatic car accident where he actually saw it happen. She was like walking the dog and a car just gunned her down, but you guessed it, because he has face blindness, he couldn't identify the person who killed his mom, which, by the way, that is a far more realistic example for now of what face blindness actually would do in a situation like that, but don't worry, I'll ruin it later when we have a little bit more information. Anyways, the fact that his mom died right in front of him has tortured him forever. Like, he's still actively having nightmares about it 20 years later, all of the time. Twist 3 in this letter that Adam is reading, Amelia was the person who killed Adam's mom, and somehow she escapes punishment for this, despite the fact that she is found by the police in the car that had killed his mom, probably with the organic matter that you would expect in that situation close at hand on the car. Again, if you didn't hear me the first time, the author feels compelled to tell us that she was found in the car that killed his mom. Stolen car, by the way. Also, they're both 13 at the time for some reason, even though I feel like this entire situation would have made a lot more sense if they were just a little bit older. Amelia gets away with this crime because, again, face blindness. The only witness can't pick her out of a lineup. And also, I guess her foster mom just made some shit up that she later recanted as an alibi. And as a result of these two obstacles, the police kind of just shrugged their shoulders and they were like, well, I guess the case is unsolvable. Robin has learned all of this because of a private investigator. I mean, why do people in thrillers ever know anything if it's not by a private investigator? And she writes about all of this in the letter to Adam, and then she gives him an ultimatum because twist number 4, Robin wants him back for some reason. We'll get to that later. But also, on top of that, Robin's dad has apparently died of like Natural causes? Who's to say? But that happened a couple of years ago, and because he's so reclusive, nobody found out. The only person who knows is Robin. Not only has she not told anybody, she has been ghostwriting under his name to continue to bring in the bag for herself. But in this letter, as a part of her ultimatum, she's like, because I now am Henry Winter, I control the name of Henry Winter, you can finally write something yourself that you want to adapt into a movie, and we can publish it under his name to make it really easy for you. Isn't that what your dream has always been? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Also, I love you, and I miss you, and I want to be with you. So yeah, that's twist number 4. At the end of the letter, because playing rock, paper, scissors was always something that they did as a couple. Wow, that's where the title comes from. She's like, you get to decide. Rock, you leave with her. Paper, you pick me, and we leave together, and you break things off with Amelia. Scissors, you don't even want to know. Adam reads this and he starts having an argument with Amelia that, I want you to remember this. I want you to remember what I'm about to say. He starts yelling at Amelia after reading this letter, to his knowledge in private, by the way. She slid it under the big front door and then left them to their own devices. But he yells at Amelia. He's like, have you ever been in trouble with the police? Did you steal a car in the middle of the night and crash into a woman in a red kimono and then leave her for dead? This is sick. You're sick. Did you think that you get away with it? How could you hide this from me? He's losing his mind talking with this woman. And Amelia, remember this, Amelia is like, Adam, I love you, let's talk about this. But she's also actively having an asthma attack because of anxiety and stress. So she doesn't say anything valuable at all during this conversation, which is just baffling given what we will soon find out. But eventually Adam is like, I was never happy with you. And then twist 5, for some fucking reason, Amelia reacts to this by turning around, going to the kitchen and grabbing a knife off of the knife block. And she almost gets it until out of nowhere, she is stabbed through the chest with a pair of scissors, because surprise, Robin was actually inside all along through some kind of passage that I guess only she knew about. Amelia is dead now. Adam and Robin insist on cutting off her wedding finger because it has the engagement ring that has been tainted on it, and then they bury her in a shallow grave next to Henry Winter. But like, just in case they thought that they were in danger of getting away with it, they just leave a box open to the air on top of the grave with the scissors that presumably were used to stab Amelia, a paper crane that for reasons represents Robin and Adam's love, and then last but not least, that severed human ring finger with the engagement ring, of course, still on it. Rock, paper, scissors, by the way, in that box. I don't know if that's clocking to you, but that's actually the title of this book. And at this point, Robin and Adam leave. They run off together into the sunset, and they're just happy together now, I guess. But that's not even the end, because of course it's not. Twist 6, for no reason at all, is that actually Amelia wasn't the person who killed Adam's mom. Adam was the one who killed his mom. And you might think to yourself, well, that makes no fucking sense. And you would be right. You would be right. It's really stupid. The backstory on this, apparently, is that Adam had made friends with Amelia, and she really wanted to steal a car. So that's what they did. They steal a car, and then they smash in the back seat of the car, and then they take it on a joyride just for fun. She's telling Adam to drive faster and faster, and he is doing so, and it's going fine, until suddenly Amelia decides to distract him by trying to do things to him while he is driving the car. I'll let you fill in that with your imagination. And again, let's just take a pause. 13, by the way. They're 13 in this flashback. I feel like this would make easily 10 times more sense if they were like 16 or 17 years old, but no, they're 13, but whatever. As the story goes, Adam hits his mom, starts freaking out, and then, quick thinking, Amelia tells him to get out of the car and pretend that he was with his mom. And she takes the fall. She gets in the driver's seat and drives away, so that way he's not implicated, which obviously that entire event is still super duper traumatic for Adam. But also, I would say that whether it was truly altruistic or not, that's a pretty bro maneuver for a friend to do for you, especially immediately after you've made a terrible mistake. But yeah, face blindness, by the way. Did you know that face blindness is both a horrible condition and also a fantastic and convenient plot device? Amelia's motivations, by the way, when it comes to marrying this guy and not having a conversation about the shared traumatic event that they both experienced, completely unknown. We'll never find out. Who cares what she thinks? She's dead. And her last act is saying absolutely nothing of value during an argument that doesn't make any sense at all, because yeah, it makes sense that Adam would be mad that she didn't tell him who she was, but he's freaking the fuck out in that scene as if she's the one who killed his mom, when he knows full well that he was the one who killed his mom and she was the reason that he got away with it. And likewise, her bafflingly inadequate defense of herself. She says absolutely nothing of value, and then I guess turns to murder, even though that's not an established part of her character at all. She's like, well, I guess I have to take a kitchen knife and stab you to death. We're never going to learn anything about her opinions on why she was stalking a guy that she knew from from a traumatic event at 13 and why she decided it would be a cool idea to pretend successfully, I guess, to be his wife. No questions asked or answered there, because why would we care about a character making sense when we could just stab her with scissors really dramatically instead? But yeah, as impenetrable as Amelia's motivations are, I don't really understand the alive characters either. I mean, Adam in general, even apart from this revelation that we get, is just the most suspiciously sinister human being that has ever lived. And it turns out there's no reason for any of it. Like, it was just kind of for fun. And also with Robin was so mad that Adam cheated on her that when she walked in on them, in her marital bed, no less, because again, Amelia was pretending to be her or whatever, Robin immediately turns around, walks outside, and uproots a whole ass tree that they'd planted in their yard a couple of years prior, representing their life together. And she carries this tiny baby tree with her back into the house and drops it into the bed with them. Honestly, iconic move, if you ask me. So clearly, she was really mad. And Adam, again, despite claiming later on that, oh yes, actually, the first wife I haven't mentioned this entire book during my POV chapters, she really is the love of my life, and I'm obsessed with her, and I would do anything for her. Despite how he changes his tune with the ending of this book, at the time, after the cheating happened, Adam immediately divorced her, she leaves the house, and then plugs and plays his new girlfriend, who looks virtually identical, I guess, to his old wife. Plug and play, remarries her instantly. Even if you expect me to believe him very earnestly being like, I thought it was you, I have face blindness, how was I supposed to know it wasn't you? Even if you expect me to believe that, this man fucking hates her. He treated her like garbage. And yet, 2 years later, Robin is like, that's my man. Standards for men lower than my morale. Also, by the way, twist 7 in the last few pages. You thought we were done, but we're actually not done. The last chapter in this book is from the perspective of the private investigator, and turns out he was originally Henry Winter's private investigator who was set to look into Robin and her life because apparently they were estranged and Henry Winter wanted to keep tabs on her. Turns out, apparently, based on what he says in his internal monologue, it's not Henry Winter that's evil. It's Robin that might have been evil and who might have been an unreliable narrator. But this is the most lukewarm twist of all time, because the PI who's telling you this information clearly doesn't even know if he believes it himself. He doesn't know shit about this family at the end of the day, other than the fact that he feels like Henry Winter was just a really chill guy. He was just a really chill guy. He wouldn't do any of that. Sounds pretty similar to a certain tyrannical monarch from earlier in this very video. The point of this twist is just to be like food for thought, because we hadn't had enough to eat, I guess, inside of this book. To me, it felt like Alice Feeney, after finishing the writing process of this book, got to the last chapter and was like, what if Robin was actually evil all along? That's an interesting question. And then instead of just allowing the reader to consider that naturally, given everything that's going on, you know, given her propensity to stab people with tiny pairs of scissors, and then cutting off her finger, burying her in a shallow grave, and putting that finger into a tiny box, maybe that woman's a little bit suspicious already. But Alice just thought to herself, she was like, I don't think I've done enough. I think I should include a completely superfluous secondary character that we've never heard from before, and I should make him wonder to himself if she's been telling the truth. That'll really show them. That'll really end this book with a bang. Oh my god, I spelled killed wrong on the board. Guys, that's embarrassing. Okay, I kind of fixed it. Look, it's high pressure. I assure you that I know how to spell killed in my everyday life in case you were concerned about me. But anyways, yeah, both of these twists that come up in the last 5 pages, like the 1-2 punch of Adam actually for some reason was driving the car that killed his mom and knew that Amelia had low-key done him a solid the entire time, alongside a random fuck-ass private investigator thinking to himself, I wonder if everything to do with Robin was an inside job. Like, they're just so useless. This is just the behavior of an author who thinks that the addition of further unanswered questions and plot holes is meaningful intrigue at the end of a thriller, rather than just lazy, unfocused writing. And I've been talking about this book for way too long at this point. The sun is low-key setting on my whiteboard. I have a feeling that this is going to be like comically longer than some of the other entries I have on this list. But with this, I imagine that the majority of why I found this book to be the written equivalent of this phase is pretty obvious by now. Abridged list of other things that sucked. There are tons of these fake deep truisms that just pop up over and over again, where the author just really thinks that she's saying something profound. It was like a weird amount for this genre for a thriller. Atonement is like that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that nobody ever really finds. The scariest haunted houses are always the ones in which you are the ghost. Sometimes the early bird eats too many worms and dies. These are everywhere. It's like the book's Black Death, and in general, the writing in this suffers from a particular sin that thrillers often have, where the characters are all constantly flaunting that they know more than you. They know more than the reader, and they know more than everybody else in the story. Half of the cliffhangers, it felt like, were just, ooh, something crazy happens, but then at the end of the chapter, the POV switches, and the first sentence of the next chapter is like, it was me, I did it, I did the crazy thing for some kind of completely unexplainable reason, and that surprise, possibly dread, that you felt momentarily for 3 sentences at the end of the last chapter, that was my design. Or just constantly ending chapters with something along the lines of, but what he doesn't know is, of course, I was lying about the truth was, only one of us would leave, but I can't tell you why, because it's just such an emotionally manipulative form of storytelling that I also find entirely transparent. I know the characters are hiding things, but they're so annoying about it all of the time that I don't even really care about finding out what it is that they're hiding, because nothing that they say is going to be worth all of the flexing that they were doing dozens of times about the fact that they know something that somebody else doesn't. And this was also the case in another book that I read by Alice Feeney a few years ago called Sometimes I Lie. That was also really bad, in my opinion. And I mean, 2 strikes, it's over. You're my nemesis now. I don't know what else to say. I honestly could keep going about this one, but I'm going to spare you because we still have a ways to go in this video with the rest of the books. Hello, it's me from the past again, keeping you on your toes. Next up, in second place, we have Magnolia Parks. You know, this one's funny because by the time I actually picked this one up and started reading it, Jessa Hastings had already had her like 3rd controversy of this calendar year. And usually my MO on my channel is that if I don't like you, if I think that you kind of suck, I'm not going to give you free press. And I had already put Magnolia Parks publicly on my TBR at some point last year, but I made the call, like I do sometimes with authors who do really stupid things, such as, in this case, equating generative AI to a Roomba, thirsting after teenage Justin Bieber publicly on Twitter, and dropping a bunch of assorted racisms on Facebook. I made the call that I would only talk about Magnolia Parks on my channel if I hated it. You would not catch me recommending this book to anybody if I liked it. That would be between me and God and no one else. Again, no free press, or at least no positive free press. Like, I'm not going to be adding anything positive to your reputation if you're acting like that apropos of nothing on socials. But I made that call to myself because I still wanted to read the book. I still kind of believed that I would actually enjoy the series. People glaze Magnolia Parks on this platform like it was carved into sacred stone tablets thousands of years ago. People talk about the writing in this book like it's going to rewire my entire brain, like it's going to change my whole perspective on life and love. And even apart from that level of hyperbole that I feel like I was often seeing on BookTube with this book, the plot was pitched to me as a really toxic, messy, Gossip Girl-esque drama about a wealthy British friend group. And one thing about me, I love mess. I love reality TV. My friends and I would turn on Jersey Shore sometimes in college just to feel something. Like, I have a soft spot for indulgent, ridiculous bullshit sometimes. But unfortunately, as you can probably tell by the fact that we are some time now into this video, I imagine this is pretty long, we're in second place on the worst list. Yeah, Magnolia Parks did not exactly live up to the standard that was set by the masses. I can't say I find it very surprising that somebody willing to say the things that Jessa Hastings says on the internet is also the person who wrote this book. Let me be the one to tell you, the people who recommended this book to you, they hate you. Do not listen to their lies because they don't like you. They don't want you to be happy. They want only to waste your time and wither your spirit away until there's nothing left of you except a hollow shell. That is the monster that this book will make out of you, as it did me. In this book, we are following the titular Magnolia Parks as she navigates her vapid and uninteresting life as a wealthy socialite in England, and she is not particularly talented or famous for any actual reason. She has no proximity to fame, even beyond the fact that her dad is an established music producer, but I don't know about you, I don't think I could name a single child of a music producer, but we're still meant to believe in this book that she is followed around constantly by the tabloids, like she's fucking Princess Diana. Really, your only choice, the only touch point you can rely upon is seeing this woman as akin to a British Kardashian, where one of the main problems in her life is this idea that one of the gossip magazines will find out something that will hurt her reputation, because Magnolia is doing things that would hurt her reputation, namely her torrid and unbelievably toxic friendship with her ex, whose name is BJ, short for Baxter James Ballantyne. Yep, his name sure is BJ. BJ and Magnolia were like middle school sweethearts. They dated for several years, and then they broke up a couple of years prior to the start of the book. Why'd they break up? Great question. BJ cheated on her with somebody who, very dramatically, he refuses to reveal the identity of to this day. I wonder what that could mean. Wonder if it might be somebody that we know. But despite that, and despite the fact that a lot of time has passed since they broke up, they are so absurdly codependent all of this time later that the main way that they spend their time, considering the fact that they don't have to work since their families have more money than there are people in England, instead of having a job or a meaningful occupation or even a way of bettering themselves that they can spend their time pursuing, their great calling in life at this point is fucking with each other and then fighting. That's all that they do. BJ has constant one-night stands with random women, and then he goes on to tell Magnolia about all of them because she hates it for obvious reasons. I mean, I would hate that even if it wasn't my ex, even if it was just somebody that I knew. But because she hates it and because she is forever trapped at the emotional age of 15, she then goes on to start all of these relationships with what feels to me like an assembly line of wealthy men devoid of any personality. Naturally, whenever she starts dating somebody new, she goes and tells BJ about it because she knows it's going to piss him off. And then afterwards, after they fight about these things, regardless of who she's dating or what else is going on inside of their lives, they go on to hang out and sleep in the same bed, and she like smells his clothes and feels deep melancholy because they can never really touch. And then you just repeat that same cycle ad infinitum forever. And the book so clearly wants you to see this, not just as entertaining slop. I mean, it knows that it's entertaining slop first and foremost, but it's also so obviously trying to position itself as this beautiful and meaningful love story about these two people who both make horrible mistakes, but then they go apart and they come back together because they love each other, because they're meant to be. And when I reviewed this last year, I got a couple of comments that were like, dude, just trust me, this series gets so good, you just have to keep going. That 550-page book you just read where nothing happens and you want to stab all of the main characters with dozens of tiny knives the whole time. That was just the prologue, man. Like, it gets so good, you have to just trust me. They're soulmates, my guy. You gotta see it through. I'm exaggerating, the comments weren't that bad, but they did remind me that there are people online who do actually talk about the series like that. But here's my issue with the idea of committing to more of this nonsense. Number one, I don't think they should be together. I think the relationship dynamic is pathetic. Number two, I hate both of them. More on that later. Number three, have I mentioned that this book is 500 pages? Like, it's really, really long. And it's difficult to make me care about characters that I hate for that long. So I ended up, after the sheer inertia of my emotional state started weighing on me, after hundreds and hundreds of pages of just the same bullshit over and over again and nothing changes, I ended up circling back to hating them even more than I already would have hated them in a shorter book. Number four, as a result of this process, I actually circle back and change my opinion on number one. I do actually think that they should be together. I think that they deserve each other because it would maximize the amount of suffering that they experience in this lifetime. And that's just not an overall arc. It's not a chronology that leaves me wanting more. If I am caught reading other books inside of this series, it would be a purely masochistic act that should make my friends and family concerned for my well-being. But anyways, in terms of what sucks about this book, let's talk about the writing. Let's talk about the writing about the relationship that sells so many people on this series. It's always the prose with Magnolia Parks somehow, and again, for I think the third time in this video, I feel like I'm being punked because it's shit like this. He laughed once, all cool and calm, and I think if we could have peeked behind heaven's curtains at that moment, we'd have seen those old fates knotting our threads together, me and Beej, in this pure, sunny, inexorable, undoable way. I said knotted, not tied, because I don't know whether we'll ever come undone. Not easily, anyway. And then Jonah charges after him, so BJ goes after Jonah, so I go after Beej. And I have this peculiar floaty feeling that perhaps I've loved too many boys, and maybe I've made too many boys love me. There are all sorts of loves in this world. I know that now. I don't know it completely. It's not a full moon of knowing just yet. Maybe at best I'm at the waxing crescent. Sorry. Maybe at best I'm at the waxing crescent of understanding what I can about love. They say it conquers all, but does it? Can it even? All is so vast. Then the world goes to black. We lock eyes, and this sheet of impenetrable glass slides up from the ground between us. We can't touch, and we can't talk, and there's nothing to say anyway besides him screaming through the glass that he misses me, and me screaming back that I miss him too, and him screaming that he's sorry, and me screaming that it's not enough. Our faces are frozen in what feels like hopeless love, but couldn't be because I don't love him anymore. I cannot. This last one just has a certain je ne sais quoi. This is in BJ's perspective also. She plucks the book from my hand and flips it over. The Little Prince. You're reading this again? Her hair's out, skin's extra brown, eyes extra bright. She's in a top she'd only ever wear on holidays with a lilac bikini under it. I nod, trying not to smile up at her like a schoolboy because I fucking love her in lilac. I read it every year. I know, she says, flicking her eyes, annoyed. What's it telling you this time? That I've been tamed. By whom? She blinks, and I know she knows. I look over at her, my eyes steadier than my heart feels. By you. Her cheeks go pink, and I sniff, amused and pleased. And then this last one, which just really emphasizes the drama of it all. I remember resentment pounding through my body, and then I remember it, like a physical punch in the gut, how much I loved him, really loved him, to the bone loved him.
cut me and I'll bleed him. How much I needed him, still needed him, would forever, always, never couldn't, even if I tried, needed him. And I remember being deeply afraid of what my life would be like without him in it. Really, dude? All that for these guys? All that for them? Are we for real right now? In terms of characters, let's learn a little bit more about the people that these quotes are about together. BJ, or as Magnolia affectionately calls him, Bij, sucks for obvious reasons. I mean, he cheated on her, and he also seems to have the emotional depth and sensitivity of like a piece of driftwood floating around in the open sea, because he really believes to his core that just going to Magnolia and being like, I love you, I'm so sorry, and then refusing to elaborate, like refusing to answer any of the questions that she has about the fact that he cheated on her. He really thinks that that should be enough for her to just forgive him, and that she's being really stupid for not forgiving him. He also has the violent streak that men who suck a lot in these books oftentimes have, where Magnolia for a time was dating one of their mutual friends and he didn't know. And for the record, this wasn't just his friend, like it was somebody that they were both friends with. And naturally, when BJ found out, he thought that the most hot, cool guy thing that he could possibly do was just beating the shit out of this guy on the pavement in front of Magnolia while she screamed at him to stop. He thought that that would be a cool thing to do. Still clearly blames her, by the way, for dating him, but whatever. Also, he was previously addicted to drugs. There's a time in the past when he almost overdosed. And then he goes on to relapse in this book, mostly out of spite, which, I mean, that sucks for him. Addiction's really tough. I hope he's able to sort that out and live a long, fulfilling life. But also, this is just not a point overall in his favor. The author also, like, really wanted us to hate him, I guess, because, again, we're getting POV chapters from his perspective, which is never a good thing to do in books like this. And yes, he does, in fact, see the world as if he's, like, a chauvinistic super senior inside of a college fraternity. I stayed upstairs for a while, chatting to this girl from France. Don't know how she wound up here, but I also don't particularly care. That's shit of me, I know, but girls are kind of the same, at least the hookup ones. Look them in the eyes, listen to them, touch their face, they're yours. Do you like stars? I ask every girl who's in my living room who I'd prefer to be in my bedroom. They all say yes, because I don't think anyone's ever said no to me besides Parks. France says yes. I appreciate it when women aren't emotional about sex and treat it more as transactional, not pretending it's something it's not. Like, we met in a club. You were grinding on a bar stool. You already kissed my friend. This isn't the fairy tale. I'm not who you bring home to your mother. I'm the wildest story you tell your friends about when you're trading dirty secrets. But how he sees all these other women, how he really sees all people on this planet, it's completely fine because he's a woman respecter for exactly one woman inside of his life. You know, the woman that he cheated on. I am BJ, woman respecter, 1000. Need firmware update in order to respect more women. Current capacity, 0.5. All of this, you might reasonably think that I must feel really bad for Magnolia. BJ does not see her as a full human being, despite what he claims inside of his internal monologue. He has no respect for this woman. His firmware is corrupted. He's borderline abusive towards her in this book, even though they're not even dating anymore. And yet, do I feel anything? Do I feel anything at all for Magnolia? You have to understand, Magnolia sucks so much. This book is written in first person. Again, you get both of their POVs, mostly Magnolia, if I'm honest. And coexisting with Magnolia in her head, in her thoughts, was such a torture chamber for me specifically that actually, I kind of think BJ should treat her even worse. I think both of them should treat each other even worse. I think that they should both keep spiraling out the other person forever until they start spiraling so fast that they breach the sound barrier, leave the atmosphere of this planet, and then slowly turn to ashes as they rapidly approach the nuclear heat of the sun. That's how much I hope they spiral. BJ at least has the class to be obvious about sucking as much as he does. He's an asshole with a victim complex, yeah, but at least he's honest about it. Magnolia, for comparison, maybe because this is a self-insert. Who said that? Who said that? It wasn't me. Magnolia sucks in a way that the book is clearly sympathetic towards, in a way that the book wants you to believe is somehow understandable given her circumstances, but in reality, she's just as selfish. She's just as annoying as he is. Magnolia does not care about anybody else inside of her life, other than the twisted, fucked up way that she cares about BJ and his opinions. She has what I would say are some generally misogynistic worldviews. Like, for example, the girl that she thinks that BJ cheated on her with, but he just refuses to corroborate that for some reason. The girl that she thinks that BJ cheated on her with, she just ices all of the time. They run in the same social circles, and she refuses to even acknowledge the presence of this girl. Even though the guy that actually cheated on her, who actually betrayed her trust, she's clearly forgiven him enough to be cuddled up in bed with him platonically every single night. Like, it's very feminine honest of her. Somehow all of the men in her life end up falling in love with her in a kind of solo leveling shonen main character sort of way, except instead of having superpowers and abilities that are more impressive than anything we've ever seen before, Magnolia's superpower that attracts all of these men to her constantly is, I guess, just being hot and also kind of vapid. Like there's nothing else going on with her. And then because again, she's a selfish prick, she's constantly treading over the feelings of these men who fall in love with her. These men in her life also that she does claim to care about, even if only as friends. She is just perpetually making them miserable for no reason, which if you have me rooting for men in a book as a concept, then something has gone terribly wrong. Magnolia also does this cool thing inside of her internal monologue that I also talked about this when I reviewed it last fall, but every time she sees a person, she feels compelled to tell the audience, tell us exactly what designer brands and clothes that person is wearing, which gives us beautiful moments such as this one. He looks so good. I don't know why he looks so good. All he's in is the black MX1 skinny fit distressed leather paneled stretch denim jeans from Amiri, black logo print loop back cotton jersey sweatshirt from Givenchy, and black Vans. A bit of a nothing outfit, really, but still, my heart goes funny. Did they hurt you? I blink up at Christian. His eyes flicker down my knitted, candy pink, hooded, pom-pom embellished mini dress from Gucci before he shakes his head. This one is less of a listicle, but I can't not read it. He's just in black Tom Ford boxer briefs. And I have a brief and inexplicable desire to lick him, but just for a second, and then it's gone, because how unrefined. So true, queen. That's my girl. And then this last one, this actually isn't in Magnolia's internal monologue, but it just has a brand in it, and it's another quote that I think needs to be read. This is BJ's perspective. I stand there watching her, arms folded across my chest, trying my best not to watch her arse as she bends over in these lacy little undies I know are from La Perla because I bought them for her. I feel relieved that she's in them. If she hated me for real, she wouldn't have put them on. It's how I know we're not done. Both of these people deserve death. Both of these people are sickening. Back to the fact that Magnolia's internal monologue is New York Fashion Week. There are so many more quotes I could have read to you, by the way, like a torrential flood of her just listing brands while she looks at people. And you might think to yourself, oh, maybe her interest in fashion that she obviously has will matter in some way to this book. Maybe her knowledge will be useful somehow. No, of course not. Why would we do that? Why would that be true when it could just not matter and mean nothing instead? While I'm talking about the writing a little bit again, I also want to read the character introduction for BJ that Magnolia has in her internal monologue, because despite the fact that she can rattle off every single designer brands that everybody around her in her life is wearing, she does this thing sometimes where she describes people in the most vague way imaginable for the art or whatever. I don't really know. I mean, I think that this is supposed to evoke something. Some kind of emotion, probably, but I'll let you decide how you feel. He shrugs indifferently. He being BJ Ballantyne, my first everything, really. Love, time, heartbreak. He's the boy with the golden hair and the golden eyes, even though his hair is brown and his eyes are green. The most beautiful boy in all of London, they say, and probably I agree, on his good days. But why am I explaining him to you? You already know who he is. Okay, sure. And just as a comparison, I want to read you this other quote of her introducing a different person. This is a different guy later in the same chapter. Jonah Hems, Christian's older brother, stretches his arms up from the other side of the table, always in all black. Black denim jacket, black t-shirt, black jeans, black cons, but he's very shiny on the inside though, precarious nature of his job aside. His hair could be blonde, but I think it's brown. And his eyes could be green, but sorry. I think there may be a brown or a hazel. All his angles are sharp. Sharp jaw, sharp nose, sharp tongue. Except not with me, because I'm his favorite. Just really paints a picture. Not sure if I could describe to you what picture exactly, or any defining traits that the picture might have, but it certainly paints a picture of something. But yeah, in summary, with the writing and the characters, just imagine Normal People by Sally Rooney, except it's written by and about the worst person that you've ever met in your entire life. That's the energy of this. Also, it's 500 pages. Have I mentioned yet several times that it's 500 pages? You might think to yourself, what could happen in those 500 pages? Turns out, absolutely fucking nothing. Like, I've already told you the entire plot of the book by describing the ruthless toxic cycle that the two of them are stuck in, because you're just watching them do the cycle the entire time. That's all that this is. They don't even really get creative about it. Like, are you bored yet? I'm bored. Only interesting note really is that the guy that she ends up dating for most of this book, her victim, if you will, they start off fake dating because she only wants to do it to piss off BJ, which at least in this case she's honest about. And Tom, the guy, is in love with his dead brother's wife, which woof. Brother just died, by the way. Like, he's still warm down there, and this is what Tom is doing. But honestly, despite that, Tom is the only likable character inside of this book, which is exactly why you know that he's going to suffer because of the two of them somehow. And sure enough, by the end of this book, for some, again, unbelievable, impenetrable reason, Tom, too, ends up in love with Magnolia anyways. He's like, if you ever want to try again with somebody else, somebody who's not BJ, let me know. Which is just, it's really tough. She needs to stay away from him. Then at the end of the book, like 450 pages in, the first actual plot point happens, and BJ and Magnolia have a conversation, and they kind of make up. And you think to yourself, wow, maybe all 450 pages I've read prior to this, like maybe they're actually going somewhere. Maybe these people have learned anything during this entire time. The two of them bang. BJ immediately goes home to his parents, and the first words out of his mouth are telling his parents that they banged, which is just, you know, I think it speaks for itself. But his parents love Magnolia, so they all celebrate. They're like, wow, I can't believe you've managed to get back together with such a wonderful woman, even though she has no discernible positive personality traits, whatever. But then, in the 11th hour, in what is clearly meant to be a shocking, heartbreaking twist at the end of this book, the two of them meet up with their friends to tell them what's going on, and immediately Magnolia clocks that her one singular female friend, the one woman in this book other than her sister and her nanny, this girl is wearing the same perfume that Magnolia smelled on BJ the night that he came home after cheating on her. Gasp. Whoa. The crowd goes wild. I don't know exactly why, as the reader, I'm supposed to care or like see this as a major betrayal, considering I could not tell you anything about this friend, anything about this woman. Magnolia does not think about anyone else inside of her life other than BJ, unless it's in terms of the clothes that they're wearing. But I guess Magnolia sees this woman as her best friend, which is news to me, if I'm being honest, considering Magnolia spends more time with her nanny, who is also her dad's mistress, than she does this girl. But obviously, because of that, she sees the fact that neither of them told her as a serious betrayal. So Magnolia and BJ fight again. They break up like 30 seconds after getting back together, and then the book just fucking ends, and any illusion of character development shatters. Any thoughts that you might have had about, oh, maybe something happened at any point in this 500-page book is gone. We're back to square one, except with an additional piece of knowledge that, if I'm being honest, I never cared about nearly as much as the book thought that I would care about it. Nobody has changed. Nobody has gotten better. All I can say for sure is that my life has certainly gotten worse. And yeah, overall, this book was just a profound waste of time. It's not even entertaining slop, because again, nothing happens. You hate everyone, and you're just reading about them having the same 3 fuck-ass thoughts as they go about ruining their own lives over and over again, in a way that is like impressively uninteresting. It's no small miracle that this book ended up being as boring as it was, given my general love for mess. Last side note, I've heard some people talk online about how refreshing it was to read such a realistic romance, like not in terms of being rich like the characters are living their lives, obviously, but in terms of, oh, they're both characters that make real mistakes and they have to pick up the pieces and like work really hard for love or whatever. And girl, if this is realistic for you, I need you to stand up. You cannot keep living like this. I hate to be the one to say it, but I think that the problem might be you. Like, if I knew people in real life who acted like this, which I don't, because I think I pick good friends, I wouldn't be able to talk with those people. I would be like constantly drowning in secondhand embarrassment hearing about all of the shit that they're doing. Yeah, it was just really bad. You're not missing anything if you skip Magnolia Parks. Hello again, it's me from the future, a second time. Chronology for this video is fucked, but you're just gonna have to bear with me. If you couldn't tell already by some of the competition that we've explored together, Battle for First this year on the worst list was kind of a bloodbath. But after everything, the book that came out on top was Merry Christmas, You Filthy Animal. And I know it's going to be a real surprise to you that a book called Merry Christmas, You Filthy Animal was garbage, but the rumors are true. It's in first place. And this is just a PSA. You should view the holiday romance table at Barnes & Noble as a radioactive nuclear zone. There is nothing there for you. There is nothing there for anybody who has an ounce of self-respect. This book took what little holiday cheer I still have left at the jaded age of 25, and it smothered it with candy canes and popcorn garlands until there was nothing left of me except pain. And unfortunately, for maybe both of us, I come bearing gifts, because this is the book that I have by far the most quotes to read for this video. I don't always read quotes for books if the writing was not particularly important for my opinion, or if I feel like I can explain it better than the book itself does. But for this book in particular, I just think that experiencing some parts of this adventure together will be more compelling for the case of putting it above everything else that we've talked about today than anything else that I could possibly say. So, premise of this is we are following a girl named Betty, who is cute and fun and quirky. She owns a tarantula, and at the start of this book, Betty has just moved to the year-round Christmas town of Kringle. Yes, Kringle in order to help her uncle with setting up a 4-season Christmas tree farm, because her tragic backstory is that she had tried setting up a 4-season Christmas gift shop inside of the big city once, but it went out of business. So she thinks that she's stupid and bad, but this is her second chance. This is her time to do it right. But the problem with that is apparently her uncle has been secretly beefing with the next door neighbors to this property, who also happen to run a Christmas tree farm that operates as this like Christmas experience thing where you can get hot cocoa and go on sleigh rides or whatever you do at these places. But he's been beefing with basically the heir apparent of that family for the farm for time eternal, aka since he was in high school. And they've been mad at each other for reasons that I'm going to save until I can read a corresponding quote. But her uncle kind of wants to sabotage them a little bit. Like, he does also sincerely care about Betty. He wants her to do well, but he actually believes in Betty enough. He thinks that she's going to do so well that the side effect of Betty running such an amazing farm is that his enemy will also go out of business. Win-win, as the kids say. Anyways, basically the entire book, up to maybe here, all happens when the parents who actually own the Christmas tree farm next door are gone. They're on vacation, and they've left the heir apparent in charge, their youngest son, whose name is Atlas Maxheimer. He goes by Max, and at this point, let me just share you some quotes. Very, very important context for this is that every chapter we start off with a couple of paragraphs of italicized words from some kind of omniscient narrator who's telling this story to us, but also with the implication that he's being actively spectated and criticized by Betty and Max in the way that he's telling it. But this quote is from the prologue. It's literally the first page of this book. This is how we start. And I'm going to be reading more of this than I have to, just to really give you an idea of the writing style. With their family of 5, Otto and Ida live on the pine-covered land of Evergreen Farm with their 3 boys, Felix, Ansel, and Atlas. Let me introduce them to you. Felix Joseph Maxheimer, the oldest of the 3, an avid weather observer known for his vast knowledge of loggers, loves being right about everything, and enjoys watching men in black rain boots, sans shirts, preferably wielding a snow shovel and dancing to the tune of Run, Rudolph, Run. In town, he's part owner of Toboggan Tours, a touring company that takes visitors out in electric snowmobiles to Candy John Hill for sledding and through the mountains just past the town of Kringle. Then there's Ansel Daniel Maxheimer, the middle child, known for instigating trouble with everything and everyone who gets in his way. He is a fan of jam, wingless angels, and chaotic pizza reviews on the internet, preferably cheese ones. Occasionally classified as immature, he's the other owner of Toboggan Tours. Being the talent of the operation, he brings the entertainment to every patron on a snowmobile. And finally, the youngest of the brood is Atlas Peter Maxheimer, known around town as simply Max. He has an enigmatic charm about him and the presence of a 6'4" lumberjack with a knack for making people smile. The complete opposite of his grumpy best friends, Coal Black over on Whistler Lane, is full of life, slightly dramatic in the best way, and a bit overripe, some around the town might say. In case you missed it, in case you're not properly incensed, I'm just going to reread that last sentence to you again. The complete opposite of his grumpy best friend, Coal Black, over on Whistler Lane is full of life, slightly dramatic in the best way, and a bit overripe, some around town might say. I don't mean to be an asshole here, a Grinch, if you will, but I'm going to be because I spent actual money for some reason on this book. The grammar of that sentence is incomprehensibly bad. Like 4 commas and an ellipsis, and you still can't make the description actually match the object of the sentence. Because to be clear, based on context from the rest of this book, Max is the one who's dramatic. He's the one that's a little bit overripe, as the streets are saying. But even if we were to throw in an extra he, like this, on the screen to make it clear that he's talking about Max and not Coal Black, which we're going to come back to later, don't you worry, we would still in that case be suffering from a comma splice in the 3rd degree. I mean, there were others in those couple of paragraphs that I've read to you so far. I can imagine that you can extrapolate how that might impact the writing style of the rest of this book. Because this is the opening page, dude. You're telling me that no editor read through that paragraph and thought, you know, maybe that sentence is a little bit indecipherable. Maybe we should change it to make it make sense. Like, I know people can be annoying about it. I know I've been annoying about it in my lifetime, but grammar exists for a reason. It exists for clarity, to make it obvious, because we're all following the rules, what exactly you're actually fucking saying. Because I revel in my self-destructive tendencies, I somehow didn't put the book down after that opening page. I decided to keep going and to waste several hours instead of 30 seconds. Let's go back now to Coal Black and just generally to the names in this series. They're completely criminal. Coal Black was the male main character of book 1, by the way, which I didn't know that book 1 existed. I didn't read it. I will not be reading it. But he has a wife from that book who is a white lady named Story with 2 E's. There's a family in town that ends up mattering and being relevant who have the last name Dankworth. The mayor of Kringle is Bob Krampus, and his son is Bob Krampus Jr., who you later find out, spoilers, it is the narrator who's telling this story. I don't know, man, it's all fucked. The meet cute that Betty and Max have, Max's opening line is, quote, "Oof. Watch the niblets," when she runs into him on the street. Within 2 pages, they go on to joke that if she were a superhero vigilante and he wanted to be her sidekick, she's like, what qualifications do you offer for that role? Trigger warning for the psychic damage that you're going to endure listening to this quote, really listening to all of the quotes in this section of the video. Qualifications. I tap my chin, trying to think of something good that I could bring to the table. Something unique. Well, for one, I'm tall. Not unique, but I'm still getting warmed up here. How is your height going to aid me in any way? If anything, it'll hinder us because you'll stand out. You didn't let me finish. I'm tall, but I have the ability to shrink. Shrink where? In cold water? I snort so hard that I have to cover my nose. How did you know? Her eyes peruse me, giving me a slow once-over before saying, her eyes are saying this, by the way, given the grammatical structure of this sentence. Ah! Sorry, I don't know what came over me. Solid guess, but I have to say, I have no use for any shrinking, so unless you have anything else to offer, I think I should be on my way. Just to be playful, I stick my hands in my pockets and smirk at her. I think that's about it. Shrinkage. From the twinkle in her eyes, I can tell she's smiling too. I'm not smiling. I'm not having a good time. I'm actually wondering why they just kept going. Why every joke, really, in this series decides to go on for several paragraphs longer than I find remotely appropriate. Next up, a little bit more of the omniscient narrator to keep the edge on. Not to take it off. The edge will not be coming off for the rest of this video. Narrator, : were you expecting them to have their meet cute already? Well, a meet cute where they actually saw each other's faces and introduced themselves? Maybe he'd search her out on the farm, looking for the girl in the red sweater? Well, I thought about it, but then decided what I have planned might be more fun, because it's Max after all. Stumbling into her on the farm is just too easy. Their first true encounter needs to be more exciting, more unexpected, more Max. But don't worry, I'll have some fun with them in the meantime. Speaking of tall from earlier, we go on to get 3 direct mentions of the fact that Max is 6'4" by page 43, which is also when Betty throws a 2-liter bottle of soda at him because she thinks that he's breaking into her house, which is a fair assumption to make given the circumstances of the situation, but to him, I guess, he was just doing recon on the property next door because he found it suspicious. But at this point, now that they've actually met in the context of her being the new girl in town that is also low-key trying to put his family out of business, now she is an enemy. They start having a little bit of a rivalry, kind of, but it's pretty one-sided. It's really just Max being mad that she exists and Betty feeling pretty creeped out about the fact that she thinks he tried to break in to maybe murder her, which again is a reasonable take given the fact that he was outside her house in the middle of nowhere for no reason. One of the main notes that I wrote down when I was reading this book at like the end of December, what a way to end my year, am I right, was, quote, "It is a Christmas miracle if you can get through a chapter of this book without mention of his seismic peen," which yeah, that's exactly the case with this. It was the case on page 100 when I wrote it down, and it was the case all the way into page 450 when the book finally had the grace to end. The best way I can describe what I imagine is the target audience of this book is this is for people who, if you've ever watched a Hallmark movie and you thought to yourself, damn, this is perfect. This is a perfect piece of art in almost every meaningful way, except I wish there were a few more dick jokes. This is the perfect book for you. It's everything that you could possibly want. Anyway, I wasn't intending to pry into your house. It was just a stupid thing I thought would protect me. And when I was looking into your window, I was just trying to see who lived there. And why didn't you just knock on my door and introduce yourself like a normal human being? Say, hey, I'm your next door neighbor. Instead, you chose to part my bush with your crowbar. He smirks a stupid smirk. Part your bush with my crowbar, huh? Yeah, wow. I've seen my fair share of male bodies, but oh my god, he's a giant. Enormous pecs positioned right above a full stack of abs, with such a deep V cut in his hips that I fear the shorts he's wearing, even though small, might fall off. And yes, those shorts are small. They're so small that I can visually see, by the way, just a moment please for visually see as a combination of words in a real book that I spent real money on. They're so small that I can visually see just how big of a gulp package he has. We're not done, by the way. I'm gonna keep going with this quote. Enjoy. That's quite the outfit. I like the ears. Are those felt? Suede? If suede, they could shrink. Did you think about that? Shrinkage? Again! We're back in this place. We'll never be free, dude. We're back in this place. We'll never be free. I glance up at Atlas, who is beaming as he says, "Shrinkage in cold weather is always a concern, but I think I handled it well." Oh god, I didn't mean like that kind of shrinkage. It keeps going. Every time you think it'll end, it'll keep going. He chuckles. I meant fabric. Fabric on the ears, not the crotch. Wasn't talking about the crotch area at all. Neither was I. He winks and then stuffs his phone away. But if you want to go there, the shorts were incredibly uncomfortable. There was mild chafing, and afterwards I spent the day in pajama pants and nothing else. No underwear, just freeballing it. Oh, nice, I nod, unsure of how to react to such honesty other than begging my brain not to visualize it. I like freeballing it. I mean, not that I have balls. Nope, I have a vagina. This next one is actually plot relevant, believe it or not. I clear my throat and move the spatula down to a picture of me handing Betty flowers. This is the target. Enemy number 1. The single human who has turned the life of your faithful friend, the one and only Atlas Maxheimer, upside down. We despise her and hope for her to trip and fall into a snowbank, gloveless. Gloveless. Aunt Cindy tisks. That's quite harsh, Atlas. I nod. I know, but that's how much we don't like her. She is on a mission to put lovable me out of business, and the only way to change her vision is to woo her, to make her fall head over heels in love with me. I don't see how wooing her will help, Story interjects, worrying her lip. Let me get there. I point to the flowers. We go on a full frontal attack, hold nothing back. We're talking pulling out my best moves. I lower myself near Cole and smile next to his face. I offer her the moneymaker, my smile. I then move to Story and tickle her neck, causing her to swat me away. I make her laugh. I stand behind Taryn and wrap my arm around her shoulders. I embrace her with my manly body. I move over to Guy, and I'm about to kiss his cheek and then think better of it, because he's not gay, of course, instead patting the top of his head. I kiss her, wildly, using tongue. Glad you didn't show that as an example with me, Guy says, because he's also not gay and wants to make sure that everybody in the room is aware of this fact. Same, dude. Then I clear my throat and continue. I woo her over and over and over again until she has no other option than to give into this, I gesture to my body, machine. Yeah, that's his plan, by the way. That's the general thrust, if you will, of this novel. It's him convincing the whole town to try to conspire together to make Betty fall in love with him, so that way, in the end, he can break her heart, and then she'll be so sad, she'll be so heartbroken, that she will have no choice but to leave the town and close down the rival tree farm. Like, that's the whole plan, which, you know, not a super likable, cool guy thing to do, especially considering that he has made no effort to talk to Betty about her plans, or if she wants to copy him and put him out of business. They haven't actually had a conversation about that at all, but whatever. Also, by the way, going back a little bit to the scene I read before that, if me reading some of the banter in this book so far has made you want to die as much as I did when I was reading this, I do think it's worth saying that it's supposed to be intentional that they're like really awkward around each other. I think that that's supposed to be part of the bit. I just found that bit to be borderline unreadable, personally, but moving on. So the big beef between Max and Uncle Dwight, let's talk about it. Apparently, in the town of Kringle, every Christmas, they have a tree, and the people who live in this town view this tree with a religious level of significance. Every single year, all of the people in the town go and they put an ornament on the tree, and with that ornament, they make some kind of wish they hope will come true. And then the next day, if your ornament is still on the tree, it's said that your wish will come to pass. Apparently, because of the power of Christmas magic, this actually works. Wishes always come true, for all that Max knows, for everybody who wishes on the tree. And you know what? Like, fair enough. If I had a magic tree that would make my dreams into reality every single year, I too would probably treat that tree like a god. I too would probably found an entire village around celebrating the presence of that tree. Uncle Dwight, back in high school, was dating a girl, and his girlfriend, it turns out, had terminal cancer when they were together. So Dwight, thinking to himself, I have a dying girlfriend, and I also have a magic tree, and it's about to be Christmas. I know what I have to do this year, and he goes and he makes a wish on the magic tree in order to miraculously heal his girlfriend. But then, the next day, he goes back to the tree, and his ornament is gone, which means that his wish is not going to come true. And then his girlfriend, true to form, dies of cancer immediately after Christmas, immediately after he finds out that the ornament was gone. Dwight asks around, and somebody's like, it was Maxheimer who took the ornaments. And Dwight, I shit you not, warning his girlfriend who has just died of terminal cancer, is like, so true, Max stole my spot somehow on the basketball team after like lying that he wouldn't and then changing his mind. And also my dead girlfriend had a crush on him before we were together, and basically he's already my nemesis, so of course he would do this shit. Of course he would take the ornament, which is just a constellation of problems to have with this man that are so different in terms of level of harm done to Dwight. But whatever, all of them hold equal weight inside of his mind, and this book will hash out every single one of them, including why Max joined the basketball team in high school, which is just
Whatever. Anyways, that's why Dwight hates Max. And despite Dwight's best efforts, and also, honestly, Max's best efforts, Betty does, in fact, fall for him, of course, during this book. Fast forwarding through a bunch of completely pointless bullshit, a blizzard happens, and Betty lives inside of a cottage that somehow has no central heating, even though they're in, like, a winter region. So, yeah, she lays down and covers herself in a bunch of blankets and just kind of decides to die because she's so cold. But fortunately, Max gets worried about her after she's not responding on the phone, and he goes over, he finds her, he carries her to safety, and I wrote down specifically that this was the first chapter on like page 220 with no mention of Max's dick. But then immediately all of that goodwill was destroyed by the narrator introducing chapter 19. Narrator, what a knight in shining armor. A true hero, some might say. If I could, I'd have stripped him down to just a pair of jeans and a reindeer hat, letting you watch in slow motion as he trekked across the snow, his hardening, his muscles flexing, turning into our very own Jack Frost and making that snow his bitch. But of course, we must be realistic here. Instead, he was a knight in shining snowsuit and a reindeer hat. But now that he's back and trying to warm up, do you think we should have them get naked for body heat? Nah, I think I might edge you a little bit more. So yeah, that made me want to die. That made me want to buy 2 guns and then shoot myself with both of them at the same time just to make sure that it sticks. Blah, blah, blah. They start hooking up constantly in this book, like a lot of hooking up. Years off my life every single time. You guys are lucky that I'm not reading you a full smut scene from this book. I'm hoping that you can just imagine in your head what writing like this would produce between these characters. Another fun narrator moment. Narrator, well, who knew Atlas Maxheimer had it in him? I mean, I did. The man might look and act like a cinnamon roll, but there's a secret side to him that only a few people know about. Not even Cole, though I think Cole is about to find out. Followed directly with him texting his best friend out of nowhere. She sat on my face last night and I made her come. Exactly what I want out of my male main character in a romance novel. How do you know? How do you know exactly what to get me? Later on, he, I shit you not, brings her a Pop-Tart in bed and she goes, and he made me breakfast? It's so thoughtful, especially considering reserves must be low. I've had a few boyfriends here and there, but they've never treated me like this. And Atlas isn't even my boyfriend, just a guy who likes me. Over a Pop-Tart? What? And just in general, again, I'm gonna read you another scene that's gonna make you upset with me, but the book is full of this, not even millennial, this is like Gen X banter. Okay, here's a question for you. She wets her lips. If eggnog was the liquid, what would you dip in it? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. A dick, we say at the same time, only to bust out in laughter so loud that the entire bar turns to look at us. But we don't care. We continue to laugh until we both have tears in our eyes. After a few seconds, I take a deep breath and say, you don't even have a dick. True, but I'd find one and dip it, she answers. I'd dip it until it was fully coated. You will never be free, you will never be free, you'll never be free. The banter will keep going until we are both dead. I wipe at my eyes. Fuck, you were made for me. Any other normal person would say a cookie or a cinnamon stick or something food related, but no, not you. You're dipping a dick. You're not like other girls because you make dirty jokes like me. Or a dong, some might say. A new Christmas tradition, dipping the dong. The banter will follow you wherever you run. The banter knows where you live. The banter has made a copy of the key to your house. The banter knows how you take your coffee. The banter knows everything about you. I snort. It's not really Christmas until Granddad dips his dong in the eggnog. She winces. Did we have to get Granddad involved? He's people too. True, she says with a nod. Just because they're old doesn't mean that they're dead. The banter is closer to you than your own family. Its love for you is endless, endless, endless. The banter will never end. The banter will go on forever. That's right. Granddad deserves the dip. And Grandma deserves to dip too. I raise a brow. Are you talking maybe a nip dip? The banter will keep going until the sun, supernovas in the sky, leaving our entire solar system nothing but barren wasteland. You will hold nothing in your hands except for this book, except for this banter. All sound other than this banter will be reduced to silence. This banter is your only friend. This banter is your only ally. This banter is all that you have. You will never be free. You will never be free. It will never end. Sorry, I don't know what came over me there. Anyways, her eyes light up. Oh my god, what if the key to Christmas magic is a dong dip and a nip dip in eggnog? Only for the tip of the nip and the tip of the dong to connect, coated in eggnog. And that's what sparks a Christmas miracle. I sit back and start to slowly clap. Holy shit, Betty, I think we just cracked the code. I lean forward again and whisper, we know the secret to Christmas. Jail. Lifetime, no parole, 30 lashes, and also your entire extended family is now on probation. This is page 319, by the way. I've survived 319 pages of this book, only to be rewarded with that. Other highlights, Max talks about wielding his peen like a, quote, freshly sharpened katana. We get really a whole sequence of all time where he invites her over to make popcorn garlands, not unlike the atrociously ugly sprayed edges of this book. And Betty goes over braless, of course, so they don't make that many garlands. But one of the garlands that they do manage to make, she ends up wrapping around his katana, but then they get interrupted by his parents, who end up coming home from vacation a couple of days early. They walk in on them like that, and they immediately throw blankets over themselves as soon as the door starts to move. But I mean, it's still pretty obvious what they've been doing. But more than that, dude, I can't do this. This is too much. More than that, as they're navigating from the living room where they're being walked in on up to Max's bedroom where they can hopefully compose themselves, the garland is still there. It's still wrapped up in the blankets with them. And it is just so painfully unfunny the entire time that you're reading it. Talking about it in this video is funny because you and me, we're suffering together right now, okay? There's humor in that. We laugh as a unit because it is the only way to cope with the tumultuous times that I put myself in reading this book. But just reading about this man's mom saying, "Oh, I think the garland is attached to the blanket. I can grab that for you." Mom heads towards us, reaching for the garland, but I squeeze my ass cheeks together and yelp, "No, nope, don't touch it." "It's fine, dear. I can grab it for you." She bends down and I screech, "It's attached to my dick. Do not tug it, do not pull. It's attached to my penis. So please, for the love of God, just let it be." Mom backs up, looking absolutely horrified. Why on earth would it be attached to your penis? Great question, and I'm about to tell her when Betty steps in. Is that not how you make a popcorn garland?" Betty asks. I could have sworn that was in the provided instructions. "We absolutely did not write that, Ida," Dad grumbles from the entryway, dragging his head over his face. "They were clearly playing around with the garland in a sexual manner, and we walked in on them. It's gotta be something the young people are doing these days. Probably saw it on social media somewhere." I don't know if I've read something this consistently atrocious, maybe ever. Like, I didn't know that there were books that existed in the world that could make me feel this soullessly dead inside. At this point, though, I'm like less than 100 pages from the end. I'm just reading in hopes that eventually I will one day be free. You will never be free. The banter does not want you to be free. The banter will not let you go. You will never be free. But yeah, anyways, where does the plot go so we can be done with this godforsaken book? Let me tell you. Betty ends up finding out about the whole plan to seduce her and then break her heart to force her to skip town, which really makes her question whether or not Max ever cared about her at all. So she gets really mad. Uncle Dwight is like, "Yeah, I mean, I told you that he basically killed my girlfriend, so not a big shock here." And to recover from this, Max knows he has to not only make it up to Betty, but also make it up to Dwight, so he investigates, because turns out it wasn't actually him who took the ornament that Christmas. And he's able to find some footage off of the Dankworth security cameras that they always have, because they have like a Christmas garden gnome thing that they keep under watch all of the time inside of their yard, whatever. I guess they still have this footage somehow, just casual 24-hour footage from 10 years ago hanging out on like a 1,000 terabyte hard drive. But they watched the video from the night of the crime, and turns out it was actually Max's brother, Ansel. So Max goes and he talks to him, and his brother is like, "Dude, I have felt so bad for so long. I thought it was Felix's ornament that I was stealing from the tree, because Felix that year made a wish for something stupid and gay, and it's like he didn't get the memo that we're not gay. Felix wished for a man in leather pants as a joke. So I grabbed his ornament because it just got me feeling some kind of way, and I didn't realize until the next day that he actually had the same exact ornament as somebody else, and I've just felt so bad this whole time knowing that I stole somebody's wish." And he still has the ornament from 10 years ago. He still has it. It's like still in his room, and he just looks at it sometimes and feels sad. So yeah, Max grabs the ornament, he sets off to talk to Dwight. Dwight forgives him after a conversation that just took absolute years off my life. Here's an excerpt. "You are a liar," Dwight shouts. "You've lied about so much." "What is he lied about?" Bob asks in a calmer voice. He's like mediating this conversation. "It started back in high school. He lied about not being interested in playing basketball, and then he goes and joins the team, taking my spot. He lied about not liking Jessica, but then I go and find her journal saying how much she liked him. And then he lied about taking the ornament. He's been lying for fucking ever." "Hold on," I say, turning toward him. "I didn't lie about basketball. You said you didn't like playing and you'd never try out." "When did I say that?" "You said that to Duncan." "No, I didn't," I say. "I was playing basketball before you moved to town, but I skipped my freshman year when you moved here because my dad needed help on the farm. He lost some employees because they moved, and basketball season is during busy Christmas season. But after that, Dad was able to hire and I could join the team again." "That is true." Bob nods his head, validating me.
Really? Dwight asks, looking stunned. Duncan said it was because he didn't like basketball. Duncan also likes to sniff glue.
It was just a lot to cope with, but whatever. Dwight forgives him, and then Max goes and plans what the book clearly believes is like a grand Christmas romantic gesture, but really all that happens is Dwight, who has forgiven him, Dwight drives Betty into town, and then he gets like 20 people outside to just stand there suspiciously, and then he has Mrs. Dankworth, who we've seen twice in this book, run outside with a pillow, and she hits Betty with the pillow, pretending that Betty is going to like steal the gnome or whatever, and I guess she has to defend it, so she beats Betty with the pillow hard enough to knock her over completely into the waiting arms of Max. That's the whole gesture. The gesture is assault. It's soft assault, but it's assault nevertheless. But good enough for Betty. They have a tearful conversation. She forgives him. The plan now, by the way, with the two farms is to not do the same thing, which I didn't mention this, but it's honestly such a good tidbit of information from this book. They have a law in the books in the town where no two business proprietors can do the same thing. So like, for example, everybody in town hates Dwight because they think he's an asshole, but because he's the only realtor, everybody has to do real estate through Dwight. Everybody has to go to the same coffee shop, and the only reason why this was even like a problem, that maybe they would do the same thing and she would put Max and his family out of business, is because technically that property is outside of the town. It's like right beyond town limits, so she wasn't beholden to the same laws. But she's following the spirit of the law now. They're not doing the same thing. Nobody else in town is doing this thing. She's going to do like a couples retreat inn sort of situation, hopefully to feed people into Max's business as well, so they can do business together until the end of time. Yeah, they live happily ever after. It's a Christmas miracle. Wow. Fun fact, when I was planning this video and selecting the books I wanted to talk about, the original list was in an almost entirely different order from what we ended up with, because I realized while I was writing how much I hated some particular books that I talked about today. I also cut a couple of books that I just didn't have the passion to support, but this was the last book that I drafted in this video, and originally it was in the top spot, but then when I was doing all of the other ones, it had bumped down to third. But the experience of pulling these quotes, of reading this book, of revisiting this story, it just meant so much to me that I had no choice but to move it back to number one again. I'm honestly not sure I will ever read a book quite this bad ever again. In such a pure way too. Like, this is just purely dog shit. It's not irresponsibly mishandling a bunch of serious themes. It's not a disappointment on what might have been kind of good. It's not problematic really in any capacity. It just has nothing inside of it that is actively good and everything about it that is actively bad. And that's really enough. Like, my problems with other books in this video might have been more complex, but I don't think I can look at you with a straight face and tell you that any of the other books in this video are worse than this one, because I've read you some quotes, right? Imagine 5 straight hours of reading quotes exactly like that. It's misery. It's a punishment that we should give petty criminals to help rehabilitate them, to help make them realize that there is no amount of good that they won't do if it will prevent them from having to sit through an experience like this ever again. I also never mentioned this, but in addition to the sprayed edges, this book also has a bunch of art that is just inside of the book randomly on pages. And I spent the whole time reading this thinking to myself that they could pay a fucking artist to draw a bunch of art for this book. They could pay for the fucking sprayed edges, but you're telling me that they couldn't pay a fucking editor good enough to fix that goddamn sentence at the beginning of this book on page 1, technically page 2, but the paragraph starts on page 1. Like, there is no one that you could pay to maybe flag that as a potential problem. I'm sorry, not to beat a dead horse, but I'm still thinking about it because it's representative of the writing of this entire book. And I should have stopped there. If I cared whether I lived or died, I should have stopped there. Like, that was just, it was a harbinger of what awaited me. The entire book is written with that level of reckless disregard for the rules of the English language. And if I haven't mentioned anything specifically about this book and you're wondering if it was good, like, you know, the characters, their arcs, the themes, the side cast, whatever, just assume that it wasn't good. Maybe I'm going too hard in the paint, but it's just true. Nothing about this book was good or worthwhile in any capacity, and for your own sake, I don't want you leaving this video thinking that that might not be true. That's my year. That was the worst list. Inshallah, nothing that I read will ever be as bad as that book was ever again. Whew! Wow, this is way longer, I think, than any of my previous worst lists have ever been. I had a lot to say this year, so hopefully this was fun for you. Hopefully this was worth the wait, although, again, I'm recording this and posting this exactly on time, so I don't know what the problem would be. I'm definitely not that late, you know? If you enjoyed this video and you would like to reward me for my suffering, please drop a like. Please comment, tell me what you hated the most, both in terms of what I told you about these books and also in terms of what you might have read that sucks this year. I'm always looking for new ways to torture myself on this channel. But okay, I'm gonna head out. God bless for being here in March. Video's so late that I'm probably going to end up titling it dishonestly. I don't have anything else to say. Bye!